From the KUAM Podcast Network, this is Rlene Live, with conversation on island issues facing Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. Now, here's Rlene.
Today is the 10th of October, 2019, and we are going to talk about Micah Griffith's journey into beekeeping and into harvesting honey. I read the article that was posted in the Guam Daily Post, and I asked Micah if he could share this history with me. I met Micah when he was probably about 7 years old. Parents had come to Guam. His mother's Korean, father's Caucasian, actually Texan, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Texan.
And just a really charming couple, and they had these two gorgeous little boys. Micah is the youngest of the two. And at the time, the Griffiths were in the same congregation as me in Central. This family is a Jehovah's Witness family. And Micah somehow learned that my husband, Bob, was a fisherman. And I don't know where Micah's interest in fishing comes from, because Texas is not exactly a coastal state, but he wanted to go fishing with Bob, and I thought it was very charming that this 7-year-old boy had the nerve to come up and say, "Does your husband fish? I want to fish with him." Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember. I even remember what we ate. We had the beans and Franken beans, and we went out on. You don't have that boat anymore. It's the inflatable one. And
it's actually still out there, but it's
not. You still have it? Yeah.
It's deflatable now.
Yeah, and I think we went out near Coco's.
Yeah, so, you went out to Aching Bay Marina.
Yeah. Everything from now till then I don't really remember, but I remember that day very clearly.
Yeah, so you went out fishing with Bob, and this is not part of beekeeping, but you continued fishing. Do you use tanks, or is it free diving?
I tried using tanks to go spearfishing, but I didn't care for it too much. I prefer to just do regular free dive.
And how deep do you go?
Most of the spearfishing that we do here at night is not too deep, so probably it's going to be around. Some parts are very shallow, like less than 3 feet, and you'll find a lot of reef fish there. Even like tataga will come up in the shallows. And then other parts will probably get to around like maybe 20-30 feet, but it's most of the area where we're going is real reefy, and it's not that deep.
Okay, well, this is an interest of mine too, because I'm working on traditional fishing practices, and I'd forgotten that you fish. So ultimately where we want to go is your beekeeping and honey harvesting experience. But I know that there's a lot of backstory before we get to that point. So can you tell us how all this developed? When you moved to Guam, where did you come from as a family? And then how did you get into the business of business?
Yeah, well, going back to all the way from Texas, at the time I moved to Guam, I think in 1990, January. And I want to say just about 8 at the time, in 2nd grade. And I just remembered from just talking to you right now that actually when I was a little kid, I had a huge bug collection. I really loved bugs. And then shortly after, I hated bugs. And like they creeped me out. So it wasn't a natural progression for me to go to beekeeping. So we moved over to Guam. I've always had an interest, I guess, in business. I was always like hustling in school, selling my cookies, or my dad would take me to the mom and pop store on the way to school, and I'd buy a bunch of whatchamacallits and then flip them at school. So I guess I've kind of always had that from the time I was young.
Help me to understand, what is a whatchamacallit?
Remember back in the day, the whatchamacallit candy bars? I don't think they make them anymore.
Oh, see? I don't like candy, so I would never know what a whatchamacallit candy bar is.
Well, when I was a kid, I loved candy, but even till now, I don't eat too much candy. But whatchamacallits, they're like Snicker bars.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're with peanuts and chocolate?
I think they had like a Rice Krispie, kind of a nutty. It just had caramel, chocolate. It was like all mixed.
Oh,
Maybe that's where they got the name.
I don't like chocolate much, but I like caramel. Let's go back to the bug thing. Why were you fascinated with bugs, and then what happened?
I don't know. It's just when I was young, we had like tarantulas in Texas. We had walking sticks, scorpions, all kinds of stuff. And so there was probably one of my parents' friends that had a collection of bugs, and he would just put them in, I forget what solution that is, like to preserve them.
Formaldehyde?
Yeah, probably formaldehyde or something, and he would give them to me. And then I had a whole collection of them. And then when we moved to Guam, it's a whole bunch of different kinds of bugs. So I was interested in it for a while, but then, I don't know, something just clicked in my brain and told me these are creepy, so...
Did you leave your collection in Texas, or did you bring it to Guam?
No, most of everything we left behind.
Why did you move to Guam?
So, in probably the late 80s, my parents wanted to take me and my brother someplace different, and they wanted to be able to do more in the voluntary work. And so they had asked for a suggestion from someone else who was in the Bahamas, and their boys were doing great, and their family was just really like picture perfect. And so they said, "Oh, what do you think we should do for our boys?" Because we were still young, and they said, "Oh, you should go and serve where the need is great, or go out and help in some area." So my parents planned on doing that they decided 1 year if it's horrible, and we'll stick it out, but we'll stay for 2 years if it's great. And we've been here ever since.
And it's been how many 2 years since?
Man.
1980, you
1990 we moved here.
Oh, 1990.
January of 1990, and it's 2019 now. And so I've spent more than half my life out here.
Well, that's wonderful, and you're a wonderful person to have on Guam. Anyway.
And you're one of the first people we met when we came out.
Well, it's because you were so bold. You wanted to know. You actually weren't interested in me. You wanted to go fishing with my husband.
Well, I think before we went fishing, you took us out before that too for water skis.
Yes.
But there was no rope.
Yeah.
And so we just went strolling in the water. And I think from there I was like, I want to go fishing.
Yeah. Well, you were a very cute little boy. And
that's all past.
That's all past. No, but I mean, seriously, you were very endearing, and you were very bold for a little kid. So it was a natural thing to want to help you. So when you moved here, what did your parents do to meet the needs of the family? What kind of business did they get involved in?
So what happened was back in Texas, my mom did housekeeping, and my father at the time I think he was teaching computer programming. But he has a history in diesel mechanics. And so he came out to Guam, and the first job I believe he got was for Vaughn Watson's, the architect.
Vaughn Watson is a two-door neighbor of ours, right up the street.
Janice that married Clint Larson. So Janice worked for Vaughn, and then told him that my dad was looking for a job. This is back like when computers were getting kind of popular. And so Vaughn asked my dad to help him order some computers. And so my dad was helping them out at Vaughn Watson's for the computers. And then my mom was doing housekeeping and for a couple of the ones in the community. And then I think what happened after that was my dad, he wanted to fix up a big semi-truck and convert it into a tow truck, because back then there wasn't a tow truck for large vehicles. Anytime a large vehicle broke down, they had to fix it there on the spot kind of thing. So he wanted to do that. So he was starting to do that, and at the same time he was working for, I think, JJ Moving. You remember them? Mm-hmm. And so while he was working for them, he had a stroke. And so that's when everything kind of came to a grinding halt. But my parents have always been really good savers, and so they had some leeway. And my mom continued to do what she was doing, but it wasn't going to be able to pay the bills. So she started working with another guy she knew. He had a tourist business, and so she was helping to do that with back then I think it was the Korean tours, giving them tours. And then another guy that she knew helped her with the idea of trying to sell things. And back then it was gold-plated jewelry, and back then it was very popular to have, that red coral, the polished red coral.
Yes.
That was so trendy for a while, and then pearls.
Yes.
And so he would let her sell those products for him, and then she would get a commission off of that.
What year did your father get a stroke?
I want to say it was maybe 92, 93.
Okay.
Not too long after we've been here.
That was pretty early on.
Yeah, I think it was around that time.
Yeah.
And then my dad, he recovered, and he taught at GCC for a while. He was teaching, and then at that time they were trying to learn computer programming. I think it was IT&E, and was there AT&T back then or something? A lot of the communication guys, this is like pre-internet, right? And so they were trying to learn all of this stuff, but there's no programs for it. So they took my dad's class, and he was teaching them computer programming. And then he was also doing, so a lot of the telecommunications guys were going to him. And at the same time, he was a diesel mechanic for like Midpack, and I'm trying to remember, maybe ERC, some of the other companies. He was doing a lot of the diesel mechanics. Eventually, he landed himself at Shell, but the refinery down south. So he was working on all their diesel stuff. So he was doing the diesel mechanic for them. And then my mom, someone told her, if you want to do like wholesale for the tourism market, you need to find a product from China. And so they helped her to go to this show where they would have all the products. You can try to source something, and she lucked out and found her one good product, which was a keychain. And back then, in the early 1990s, tourism was so great that you could have any product and it would sell. That's when the Japanese tourist was very strong. And so some of the products that she was bringing back, they would even misspell the products, or it was really bad or like bad condition, and she doesn't know what to do because she put her money into it, and she only started, I think, with like maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and then it's gonna get wiped out. We've even had shipments come in that they came in rusty, and we had to trash the whole thing, and we just lost the whole investment. So the whole time my dad is keeping his job to keep her small business running, right? And at the time, I think all of her inventory kind of fit under the bed and in one closet. And but because the economy was so good with the tourism, then it kind of made it easier. And there was no competition back then either, because no one was really bringing in the stuff.
Where was she selling them?
Back then, the courtyard here in Agana.
The plaza?
Yeah, the plaza there would be like these. I think they still might set up some canopies there, but it was mostly there. And in Paseo, where they had the, like, going out to go surf at a boat. There used to be a walkway there, and they would line them up with so like a portable kiosk. Yeah, they had this like little tent set up, and they stopped that a little bit later. But those were the two main locations. Yeah.
So that's where the tourist market would find her.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we never did retail, but she would always do the wholesale because we couldn't operate a store. That's kind of...
Who would she wholesale to down in the plaza?
There was like these little tents that people would set up, and they would buy her keychains. And then also we were selling all up and down Tumon Strip. This is before ABC store came. So there was a lot of mom and pop shops. And so she would sell to most of them. And then she continued to do that. And my dad continued to be a mechanic. And I was probably going into, I think, high school. And when I would come, well, actually from middle school on, I would come home and she would like sweatshop labor me, and like I have to work, and I'm working on these keychains and stuff, bundling them. And I did that all the way up until high school. And then I also picked up a lot of janitorial jobs and strip and wax jobs for resurfacing the floors, and carpet cleaning jobs, from all the brothers that got all these cleaning jobs, right? So that's where I did most of my work. And then when I was in high school, I really was not a fan of school. And so I was trying to figure out, how can I get out of school earlier, right? And so I found out about this program, the work for credit. But that's only for seniors. And failing seniors, I think. They had priority, and I was a freshman. So there's no way I can get in.
So don't tell me that you decided to fail just so you can get in.
No. I just went and asked, and they were really cool about it. And they're like, okay, we'll let you in early.
Oh.
And so they let me in for my freshman year, my summer year, and I started working. But I was already working for my mom, right? And then after 1 year of that, they said, hey, how come all your boss's signatures is the same as your mom's signature? And I'm like, oh, I work for my mom. And they're like, you can't do that. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? And so I asked my friend Steven, who's also in the wholesale business.
Steven who?
Fujiwara. But he's in Hawaii now.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, hey, are you looking for some work? And he's like, yeah, you want to come and work? I said, yeah, that'd be great. And so he's the one who became my boss after that and the rest of the years of high school. And it turned out I got to graduate a year early because of all the credits were all filled out from working for my mom and working for my friend. Because I was on the tourism path.
Okay.
And they considered that working in the tourist industry.
Yes.
And so I would have to go in. My freshman year, I had full schedule. Sophomore year, I had 4 classes. And then I think junior year, I had half day. And then senior year, no senior year.
So you did have to go to class?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a shared program where classroom as well as practical experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't do it you can only get the credits for electives.
I see.
Yeah, and then that was before they changed the amount of credits you need. Now the kids all need a lot more credits.
Okay.
So, but back then I was able to get out of school early, and I did that. And then I worked for my mom for a few months. And then that's when I went to do some voluntary service at Bethel for a few years. And even till that time, my mom's business had only grown from under her bed to the closet to we built in the garage, we had a 2-stall garage, and we closed down one, and that was our warehouse. And then about that time when I was about ready to come out of Bethel and get some work,
Get employed.
Yeah, get employed. That's when SARS happened.
And what year was that?
It was the same year as 9/11 and SARS happened at the same time, and we had a typhoon that rolled through, and business was just done.
Really?
There was nothing. And so my parents said, you're not going to be able to work for us because we're not really in business, right? It was so slow, the economy.
We're struggling.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. So I just I stuck it out there for a little bit longer, and then
You stuck it out where?
when I was still doing the voluntary work.
Oh,
And then they were going to be starting up construction there. That's when they had the big renovation. And so I promised Marilee, she's like, if they start by this date, you're going to stay for the whole construction project. And if they don't, then you're free as a bird, right? So they never started in time. And then I left.
This is Rlene Live, and we've got more coming up in just a moment.
Buenas and Havre, I'm Lacey Martinez Francisco. If you're hungry or have a passion about everything food, then I've got just the show for you, with me. Each week I bring you Foodie Call, a show about all aspects of how Iguamanians enjoy our cuisine, preparing it, consuming it, sharing it, using it as social currency, and talking endlessly about it. We also profile people in our community who are masters of their crafts in working with food. Whether you eat with your eyes or can't wait to fill your stomach, or if you're a perfectionist about the process, you'll enjoy Foodie Call right here on the KWM Podcast Network. So lock in our show by subscribing to our feed on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, or on your favorite podcatcher platform, and get our freshest episodes delivered right to your device when we're done cooking them. We'll see you then, and we'll make you a plate.
Now, more Rlene Live on the KUAM Podcast Network.
Fortunately, tourism picked back up. And so my mom, she's like pretty tough, right? Plus, this is her business. So she's like, okay, you're going to work for me. You find your own accounts, and you don't bother any of my accounts. So, I had to go and hit the streets and start trying to find new accounts. And I was so surprised because I was, just a kid. Nobody knows me from anywhere. And these are all business professionals. I didn't expect for them to give me the time of the day. But I was so impressed, especially with Marlene Pasqua. She's the buyer before at DFS. And, I come in there with my binder, and I have some pictures of magnets and keychains and stuff. And she's like, okay. She gave me a meeting. She's like, we'll schedule a meeting. And then she's there with her assistant buyers there, and I'm in this huge room with all these chairs, and it's just me. And then I just gave my presentation. And so she said, okay, we'll start you at Underwater World. And that one turned out actually out to be a really good account. It got to the point where I think we were doing, they said for the souvenirs business, we were 80% of their sales. But that took years to grow to that size. And then she also put us in duty free and all of the Micronesian duty frees. And even at that time, they said like some of our products were always in the top 5 sales for souvenirs.
When you go to these fairs, how do you know to select a product that is going to make the top 5 most popular selling item on Guam?
So it takes you're going to choose a lot of bad product. And a lot of times you'll stumble on a product by accident. You think, oh, this thing's never going to sell. And you try it out and it's like the hottest thing. And so that's kind of what happened with a lot of the products that we found. My first big product I sold was this one product called Rocking Annie. And it was basically a bobblehead that has a cute animal bobblehead. And the mouth pops out and you put in a picture. So it's like a picture frame bobblehead. I saw it when we went to a trade show with my parents. So even while I was in high school, even though I wasn't really in the business because I'm still a kid, my parents would bring me to Hong Kong. And so I was learning the business. A lot of times I was just carrying things and carrying all the stuff back. But that was before we were doing shipping because it was such small quantities that we're bringing. So we went to Hong Kong and I saw this product and I just thought this product is going to sell. And my parents were like, no, that's not going to sell. Then the next year we went, we saw it again. I'm like, I really think this product's going to sell. And they're like, no one wants that. And my mom has her style, and it's like it leans towards the female demographic, and which is smart because that's who buys most of the product. And also it's like a little bit older style, and she likes jewelry and things like that.
She buys for herself then?
Yeah, she's buying for her, and that's probably the customer who's also buying from us. And so I kind of had an appeal towards the younger demographic. And I kept seeing this product, and I kept telling my parents, I think this is going to sell. And so my parents said, okay, if you think it's going to sell, then put up the cash and you buy it. And so at the time, all I had was, it was actually pretty good, I think, for I just out of high school, I think I had saved up $6,000.
Wow.
And so I've always been a saver since I was a kid.
You learned it from your parents.
Yeah. And so my parents were like, okay, well, you drain your bank account, and if you believe in it that much, then buy it.
You needed to invest $6,000 on the bubblehead?
The minimum that we could invest was 10.
$10,000 to invest is the minimum to be in the game.
Yeah. So back then in Hong Kong, like a lot of times the minimums was 1 container, which is a 20-foot container of a product, or they'll give you $1 minimum, which was usually around like $20,000. And a lot of times they won't they're like, where's Guam? And they're like, oh, USA? And we're like, no, we're a small island very close. And they're like, oh, they're not interested. And then we'll say, they're like, what's your population? Because we're trying to talk them down in minimums, right? We're like, oh, we have like 150, 180,000. I forget what the population was back then.
It hasn't changed much.
Yeah, it's been around. So we'll tell them it's that amount, and then they're like not interested. But we have to tell them, no, but it's a tourist destination, and we get lots of tourists coming from Japan. And then we would really have to just like haggle with people just for them to give us the time of day to, take us seriously. And this one company, it was fortunate that they're like, yeah, okay, we'll work with you. And so
the bobblehead.
Yeah, bobblehead. So it's like $6,000. I had to put up the cash. My parents put up the other $4,000, brought in the product, and it just blew off the shelves. And that's
how much did you sell them for?
So you figure out what is your shipping cost, the product cost, and we just doubled it. And then that's usually the going rate that most of the wholesale was doing. And then that's when ABC was here.
And what would you put into the mouth?
Like a photograph. So it's like a little picture frame, and it looks almost like emoji style, very anime kind of style. And so we brought it in, and it just sold out. And then ABC was like, this is the greatest thing, right?
You sold out 10,000 of those.
Yeah, quick.
How quick?
Couple months.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was like they gave us ABC, if a product does good, that's one thing, like it's a tip. If somebody wants to get into this business, you go into an ABC and you look at what's on the bay ends. Bay ends are like prime real estate.
Bay ends.
Yeah.
The end of the bay.
The end of the bay, yeah. And if they're there, and if it takes a big spot, like Blockbuster back in the day, if the whole wall is one video, you know it's a good movie.
You know it's a good movie.
Yeah, so same thing.
That.
If you go to a store and you see it's got big space, prime location, then that's a good selling product. So
how long did you sell the bubble heads?
it did pretty good for a few years. That was actually our first container to bring in.
Wow.
So
and how many did you bring in the container?
The containers were probably maybe around like 20 grand per container.
Wow.
Around that much. So we started bringing this product in, and we're making good margins on it. It's selling very quickly. But the thing about trendy products is when they fall out of favor, they die. They die. And so we were like blowing through containers of this product, and then all of a sudden we're stuck with it for years.
How many?
We eventually ended up throwing away maybe a dumpster or two of product because the packaging's already starting to yellow. But it probably took us maybe about 3 years to clear out of the last remaining stock.
So how many years in the run?
It was probably a good seller for about 3 to 4 years.
And then 3 more years holding on to it.
Yeah.
Why did you hold on so long?
Just because we had the warehouse space, and then there's still a few places that were selling it. And it's, when you invest in something, even though it stops selling, in your mind, you're looking at it and you see money, even if it's dead money. And so you have to know when to cut.
You see the potential for it, right?
And you're like, man, this thing was selling so good, and now it's not. So it's kind of an emotional thing.
Were there any signs of the slowdown?
Yeah, it slowed down pretty drastically. Like maybe within the period of 4 or 5 months. And at first you're thinking, oh, maybe it's just a slow trend. It's going to pick back up. But it just doesn't. All in all, it was a win because it did so good for so long.
You made more money on it than you lost.
And then, so that was my first pick. And fortunately, it was a good one. And then we had some other ones that were some really good picks. But it was a customer, like DFS. They would say, hey, we saw this. Can you source it for us? And I'd think, in my mind, I'm like, there's no way that's going to sell. And then we try it out, and it's just sells like crazy. So one of the products that was like a little inflatable bag that was filled with body wash. And they're shaped like little crabs and fish and stuff. And it's very cute. Mm-hmm. And they had saw it somewhere on one of their vacations, and they're like, oh, we think this would be great. Can you source it for Guam? So a good communication with your buyers. They know what they're doing. And you have to have a certain level of trust. And then you just okay, you want me to bring this? I'll bring it.
But do they buy it? I mean, do they guarantee the sale?
There's no guarantee. So even if a buyer, let's say I'm the buyer, and I say, Rlene, I really want you to bring in this product. And you go and you do all the work, you find the product, you bring it in, and then you're like, okay, I got the product. And then I see it and I say, oh, yeah, we changed our mind about that. Or I could be like, I found someone else who brought it first. Or someone else found it cheaper or something. So it's always going to be a little bit of a gamble. Even if I say, Rlene, I promise you I will sell through this product. And you bring it in, and then next thing you know, I'm like, I quit. Or I got fired. Or I'm at another place. A new buyer comes in, said, I didn't make that deal with you, Rlene. Your deal was with that guy. There is always going to be a level of risk. So that's why it's good not to have too much inventory unless you know you have a level of confidence in a product.
And so the shelf life of an item or a product, you weren't bringing food in at this time, were you?
No, we never touched food.
But the shelf life, how long is shelf life? It's market dependent?
A lot of times shelf life on products that we were bringing in was we would try to go for infinite. As long as the product isn't damaged, as long as the packaging isn't damaged. But we've had some nightmares like moisture, mold, where the packaging is trashed, then your product's done, and we just have to trash it.
Are all these products coming in from China?
The earliest that we started doing import was from Korea, because that's my mom's Korean. She can go there. She speaks Korean. They're haggling deals in the street markets and stuff. That was a real. That was a lot
of fun, by the way.
Yeah, and then the food is great. And then when we started bringing in from China, we only brought in a few products. And then we only started expanding the lineup when I needed work. And so I would go with them on shows, and we would have a goal to increase this many product lines or something, then it kind of became a monster to where everyone was wanting to buy from us. So we went from my mom's little, the storage room that was in the garage, to getting another warehouse, then getting a second warehouse. Then we had to get a third warehouse. And I was working, even Maybelline, my wife, she was like putting in crazy hours. We're staying up like all night, every night, like Monday to Sunday. Because, you promise your customer something. You say, we're going to get it here on this time. And so we don't want to go back on that. And so we got to the point where we're like, okay, this got out of hand. And we took on too many projects. And my mom didn't want to grow the business, like continuing to hire lots of people, which it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, less overhead, less responsibility. And so we didn't want to grow the business. And so we were just like, we're doing everything ourselves. And it got to the point where like, okay, we need to simplify at that time. So at that time, we were I think it was me and another wholesaler that were doing all of the tourism sales for we're the biggest in DFS. And the one that was neck and neck with us, she really wanted to have all of it. So she offered to buy us out of DFS. And so we said, okay, because a lot of our inventory, like one whole warehouse inventory, was just for DFS.
Wow.
And so then we're like, okay, that's perfect. You just take it. And so she took off all of the DFS accounts and all of the Outer Island accounts and Underwater World, which was kind of like the gym for us. Underwater World did a lot of business for frames and stuff. So we sold it all out to her. Shortly after that, the buyers had changed a couple times, and a lot of the product they didn't want anymore. And so we got out kind of like at a very good time. And it would have been like a really big problem if we had been stuck there with all that product that DFS no longer wanted. They even had us do some like custom frames and stuff. So it's kind of hard to sell it on the outside market.
So you got out by the skin of your teeth?
Yeah. And it just kind of, it wasn't like right away it happened, but it was probably within 12 months time.
That's pretty quick though in the industry, right?
Yeah, so like the timing of it was good for us, but DFS, they worked with the other buyer and helped her to deplete most of the stock. But
they didn't just abandon her.
Yeah, so she did okay, but that kind of set her back though, because what her goal was to double her product line. And then DFS, what they do is sometimes they'll have like a global shift where they're like, okay, we're getting into like a cheaper souvenir style. Then they're like, oh, we're going super luxury, because they have to follow the markets too. And then they're like, okay, we're not going to be doing that anymore. And even at that time, I think they were shifting their buying from like Guam to Hong Kong and stuff. So there was a lot of global shifting happening at that time. And
what year was this?
That was when I was still living in Tamuning. So probably, I want to say 10 to 11 years ago that happened. So we were able to downsize. We built a warehouse, and then so that kind of worked out good too, because as we were building our warehouse, we had a really sweet deal on warehouse rent. Our landlord sold the business, and then the next company came in and says, we're doubling your rent. And so we're like, okay, it's good timing that we built the warehouse then. So we just like cut a lot of our deadlines and then just shrunk everything down, and then just only kept good lines at our new warehouse. Anyways, so moving forward, the business, we kept it small. Well, we tried to keep it small. And then that's around the time my parents, they wanted to retire. My father retired, and my mom was ready to retire. And there was another guy we did business with, and we did a lot of work with him, because a lot of times when we were trying to get into stores with new product, they want to do business with ones they're already doing business with.
And who's this man?
He's my friend named Juan Cho. He owns our current business now.
Okay.
So him and his buddy, they started up a wholesale business too, and they were doing they're still trying to find what they're going to sell. They were having a hard time getting into some accounts, and they had good product, but stores aren't looking for new suppliers. And so they offered everybody, and they were having a hard time getting it in. So they knew my mom. They asked her if she could help. So we went and showed the same product, and they're like, yeah, we'll take it. And they were good selling products. And so what we were doing was we were selling it for him, and then he just gave us a commission. And so we kind of helped him out that way. He went into the local market, and he did really well for himself there. But he still kind of wanted the tourist market. And at the time, we were doing really well with tourism. And so he says, anytime you want to sell, I want to buy your business. And so that was kind of our out. And my mom wanted to retire. My dad wanted to retire. So I just told them, let me run the business for a few years, and then we'll see. But my mom, when times would start to get hard with like the economy, North Korea would make threats, or typhoons would come through, business would be slow. My mom would always, she would get so stressed out about it. She couldn't mentally separate from the business because she started it from nothing. So this is like my other brother, right? It's her other child. So
yep, the youngest baby.
Yeah, so she would get stressed out about it. So even though she's retired, she's not fully retired, and she would still work herself, try to do things, and that was not the point of her retirement. So I told her, okay, let's sell the business.
Don't go away. There's more coming up with Rlene Live on the KUAM Podcast Network.
Hey there, podcast subscribers. Wait, hold up. You're not already permanently locked in to receive our feed of awesome on-demand digital audio shows from the KUAM Podcast Network? Shame on you. But it's okay. There's hope for all of us. All you need to do is head over to SoundCloud and hit follow, or if you're on iTunes, tap the subscribe button as hard as you can to directly link up to our studios and get all of our episodes on any digital device, so that you can enjoy them and join the conversation as soon as we upload them. I'm talking about phones, tablets, Apple TV, whatever. You'll be able to get to us. You can also use your favorite podcast application and search KUAM Podcast Network to add us. It's super easy, super fun, super interesting, and most importantly, super free. And for anyone who's already subscribed, thank you so much. You don't need to do any of this, but if you are in iTunes, do what we do on Guam, help your neighbors out. Break out your digital jumper cables and give us a rating and a review to help our podcast reach as many people as possible. Also, you want to register your email address to receive KUAM Digital Digest, our weekly newsletter that goes out every Friday, by going to KUAM.com and then clicking on the newsletter button at the way tippy top of our homepage. Thanks so much for supporting us, and okay, that's enough gratuitous self-promotion. Let's get back to the show.
Now, back to the conversation with Rlene Live.
And by that time, I had saved up enough money to start investing in real estate. And so I wanted to get to the point where my real estate could pay for, could offset my expenses, for living expenses. So I got to that point just before we had sold the business. And then we sold the business. Part of the deal was I would help run it for a year. And then, which we did, and my wife had to stay on board. All of us kind of had to stay on board for a little bit until there was a smooth transition. And then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now? And I didn't sign a non-compete with the guy who bought my business, Juan, but I didn't want to go and start competing with him.
Of course.
And so he offered me, he's a very nice guy, and he wanted me to stay on as a partner. But that's not the purpose of me selling the business, and I don't have anything against anyone, but I don't believe in partnerships because it can be chaotic, right?
Right.
And so I just told him I'm not interested, and he says, well, for the next 5 years, if you change your mind, you can always buy back in, which was very gracious of him. But I told him I'm not going to get back into the wholesale business. So I continued to help him with that business, and he told me that anything that I wanted to do, he would support me. And I never wanted to have a lot of overhead with staff, and I didn't like having to deal with collections and things like that. I don't like having to deal with the deliveries. So we made a deal where he would handle my distribution.
Okay.
And so that's worked out really good for both of us. And then I was trying to figure out, okay, so what kind of products am I going to do? And I started going back to a lot of the old buyers. Now, it was kind of funny. Marlene Pasqua had left just as we had left DFS. And then she had come back. She was doing the PX on base for a while. And then she went to Lotte when Lotte came to Guam. And so she reached out and she talked to me. And then I was like, well, I'm kind of out of the business, but I brought in a lot of the products from the old company in. And they were doing really well there at Lotte. And then she says that she wanted me to do a bath salts project. So back in the day when we were selling to DFS, there was another gentleman there who was selling bath salts. And they sold well, but then he had passed away and no one else took up the business.
And you're talking about bath salt.
Bath salt.
SALT.
Yeah.
Okay.
So bath salts is kind of a dead product though.
Yes.
People take showers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I took a bath. Everyone takes showers, but she's like,
Yeah, you need a bathtub.
Yeah, she's like, she keeps telling me, no, bath salts. Because I remember back in the day, they were really good.
Yeah.
And even that, I was kind of skeptical because, that's a long time ago.
Right.
Trends have come and gone. And
Behavior changes.
Yeah, and bath salts has also gone, right? No one uses bath salts anymore. But
Well, actually, a lot of people still use bath salts.
yeah, so she kept asking me, so I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to work on this project with you. And so we brought it in, and then she left Lotte. And so I'm like, oh. But she went to Japan Plaza at that time. And so she was like very helpful. She brought it in, and it did pretty well. And so then I'm trying to think, okay, what other products can I do along with this line? Because it's good not to just bring in one product.
Sure.
You need to have a supporting lineup. Even if it's a product that's not going to sell great, it's nice to have a presentation, right? So we brought in a few lines. We started doing like soaps and bath bombs, but they're super labor intensive. And we just eventually grew the line, and we had to cut the losers out of the lineup.
Did you make your own soaps?
Yeah, so we were doing soaps.
You made them here.
Yeah.
That must have been very interesting, but consuming.
Yeah, time consuming. Like for the first year, I was making like next to nothing and working all the time. But that's what's involved in trying to learn how to do things. Yeah, starting it up,
sure.
Right? And initial investment. And I wasn't expecting to make money back in the first year. I told
Really?
May, yeah, I said, when we start this up, I said, I'll give it 3 years.
Woo.
I said, the first year, I'm not going to make any money. First year, I didn't take a payroll. I just
Worked.
worked. And then actually, I loaned the company money. And then I was like, my goal for the first year was for the company to pay me back. Then the second year, but from the year one, we had, I think, we picked up an employee, and then May. So, of course, May's got to get paid, right?
Of
And
course.
so does the worker. So I always have to make sure that we can make payroll. We wanted it to pay our health insurance, utilities, cell phone bills, stuff like that. And then year 2, I started taking a half check, like half of
What you wanted a month.
Well, sorry, I didn't start taking a paycheck till year 3. But the company had already gotten profitable. But it's like at the end of each year, I had to like loan money to the company just to keep it propped. And then by year 2, it was profitable. By year 3, now it's doing pretty good. So
And still selling soap.
no, we cut that product early on.
What were you selling at that point?
So in the 3rd year, we added on like lotion, body butter, coconut oil. These were things that are easier to work with. And then the other problem with soap is like there's a lot of damages. There's a shelf life. And once the product starts to change in its appearance, then you got to pull the product. Otherwise, it's defacing your brand, right?
Right.
So we started doing that, and then we wanted to keep it. That product line was going to be a made in Guam product line. So we had to go through the process with the Gita. And they're very helpful. The girls
The
there,
certificates?
yeah, they help walk us through it and stuff, and they'll come out and they want to see as you're making it, like the process, and so they're very patient with me because like they'll come and they'll spend the day like it takes very long, right? And
Oh, yeah.
they're like, oh, we're so hungry and stuff. So, but the girls are great, and so they would come out, and then even them, they have a lot of feedback, and it's always good to just listen to, I guess, the feedback, and then they'll say, hey, what about this? And some of it's like, oh, I've tried that, it's not going to work. And then other things are like, oh, well, you could try like this. So they're always trying to help the locals here try to figure out products that could sell. The hard thing is convincing the buyers that this is something that the tourists would want. And so you kind of have to look at who's your end demographic. So we started building up the product line, and I went back to Erico again, and also the buyer for it was JP Superstore, and they said that we are pushing the foodstuffs, and we want something that's going to be foodstuffs. And this is the struggle I've had throughout all the years I've been doing business. I hate food stuff because it's too much work, a lot of damages, you got time working against you, and there's a lot of returns, and things just go bad. So I started
expiration dates, right?
That's always against you. And the problem with expiration dates is a product may not expire yet, but just because there's one with a newer expiration date, now that one's like destined to just sit there forever, right? Everyone, that's what we always do. We check the expiration date. We want the newest one.
Right.
And so, it could still not be expired for 3 months out, but it's just going to sit there.
But your mind has told you it's an inferior product.
Yeah. So that's why I've tried doing chocolate in the past, and it just wasn't worth it. Like, all my profits went to returns. And then you have the whole storage issue. You have to worry about climate and stuff. Sometimes they'll put it right next to refrigeration, and condensation ruins your packaging. And so there's a lot of headache when it comes to food. But they keep asking for it. So I try to think, okay, what foodstuffs have no shelf life? Sugar has no shelf life, right? Salt has no shelf life. Alcohol, vinegar. But alcohol has there's high expense in that, and the profit margin is not great in alcohol. So there's a lot of things that actually don't expire. And so I went with salt. So I started doing salts, working with salts.
Was it exploratory at first, salt? Because it's one of the products that don't have a shelf life?
Yeah, so that was my number one, was no shelf life. And a lot of times when I go on vacation, this business has kind of ruined me. Like, when I see souvenirs, I'll see souvenirs, and all I can picture in my mind is like, I know the real cost of that $5 keychain is 50 cents in China. I'm not going to pay for that, right? And May's like, oh, it's souvenirs. I'm like, no, I'm in the souvenir business. I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
But I will, every time I do go on a vacation, I love going to the souvenir shops to see like
what's selling, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'll take pictures of everything. I'm always trying to get ideas. And then I went to Hawaii, and I saw that they were doing salt. And I looked at it, and I was like, hey, this is pretty good packaging. It was about maybe a year and a half later, after all the development, we finally got it in, started working with it. And then the next thing we started doing was, during that time, I had gone to Hawaii several times and was interested in the honey. And I found out that honey has no expiration date, but it does have a problem with crystallizing.
Yes.
And so...
But that can be corrected.
Yeah, but the problem is if it's colder temperatures, causes it to crystallize a little faster. And a lot of times they'll like to put it near the refrigeration section. I'm like, oh. But anyways, I went to Hawaii. I went to a show in Hawaii, and then I met with some of the honey producers there, asked them a lot of questions. And then I had come back. DFS had asked me to do honey. And then I asked around. At the time, I only knew just like 1 or 2 beekeepers. And I asked them about production here. And production is not nearly enough to what Tumon needs. And if you have a spot in a shelf on a store and that shelf is empty, that's like the ultimate sin, right?
Yes.
Like, where's your product? This is dead space. You're losing us money. You can never run out of product. And so we were like, no, we can't do honey. And so we were trying to see if Hawaii could do honey for us. We went up there, the pricing, I gave the pricing to duty free. They're like, that's way too expensive. It's never going to work. So it just kept getting put on the back burner. Like, it's an idea, and it's always there, just, iron in the fire. Yeah, you're like, okay, maybe we can do this. It meets no shelf life, and it's a demand that people want. but I never really pursued it, and I never really wanted to. And then my mom, she went to Korea, and they were visiting some friends and some family, and my dad was on base, and they're like, "What do you want?" And they're like, "Can you get us Johnny Walker and U.S. grade A honey?" And then I was like, that kind of stood out to me, that, oh, they like honey here. And so then they're like, oh yeah, the Koreans love honey. And so I was like, oh, so for Koreans, a lot of times honey is more than just adding flavor to food. They think of it in terms of almost like medicinal, right?
Right.
Because there are a lot of good properties in honey. Mm-hmm. And then I went to, I started doing a lot more research, and then I met with some of my suppliers out of Hong Kong and asked them. And when I was there, I was looking for packaging for honey. And then the guys who asked me in Hong Kong, they're like, you're doing honey? I'm like, well, I'm looking at packaging ideas. And they're like, we would be interested in purchasing honey. And I'm like, I can't even supply Guam. We're not going to be able to supply China, right? But I'm like, why would China want honey from us? Because China is one of the biggest producers of honey. India is also, those are the top two producers of honey. But they're also have no trust in
their own product?
Yeah, of the product. Like, because they're notorious for messing with things, like adding
additives.
Yeah, sugar water, diluting it, and so in their mind, it's funny because like in China, they don't want to buy things in China. And so they'll come down to Hong Kong and buy things that were made in China and just truck down to Hong Kong. But they'll go down to Hong Kong to buy it, and then they have tons of luggages. You'll see them at the border bringing them back and going through customs. It's funny that way. And so
the psychology of people, huh?
Even so, one of the ladies I do business with in Hong Kong, she said what they started doing was selling the product in China, labeled as export Hong Kong product, and they still don't trust it. And so they don't believe that, so they'll still go down to Hong Kong, she said, and bring it back. But anyway, so they have a distrust of their honey.
China and India both?
Yeah, so then I started doing research on it. And like, oh, okay, so why do they distrust it? Oh, and then that's when I learned about the U.S. grade A standard. And then that's what stuck out to me, right? When they said what they wanted from base. They want U.S. grade A.
What base?
From the Korea base. When my parents went up to Korea
the military
to visit,
base. Okay.
They're like, bring us the honey. And they want the big one, honey. And it's so expensive there in Korea. So then my mom told me, why don't you look into honey? And I was like, well, I've kind of been thinking about it for a while, but yeah, we'll see. So then I went out to Thailand, and the guy that I sold my business to, me and Juan, we went out to Thailand, and we were looking for, he said that he wanted to take me there to this one food show to get ideas for things that I could do. So we were looking into like taro chips, because that's popular in Hawaii, but we found out like it's a problem with like turning rancid, and I don't want to deal with shelf life. So we're looking at all kinds of stuff in Thailand. And also DFS Palau had wanted us to go out there looking for these little glass like dolphin sculptures and stuff. So we're out there, and then one of the guys I've been trying to be in communication with was a beekeeper in the West Coast. And then I just saw like a little logo insignia on his shirt, and I'm like, I could have swore I've seen that before. I bet you I've been emailing this guy. And so I just walked up to this guy. I met him in Thailand. He was in the middle of a meeting. I'm like, hey, when you get a second, can I talk to you? And he's like, yeah, okay. And I just waited for him to finish his meeting. He came out. He's a very gracious old man. And I talked to him, and he's like, oh, I'm retired. He's like, you've been emailing my son. He runs the business now. And he's like, I just like to come out to these food shows to see what's going on, And he's kind of like my mom, can't let go of the business. And I found out he
gets in the blood, huh?
Yeah, so it's the business that he started up. He started out as a beekeeper, and he grew it into this big business, turned it over to his son. And I was saying, I'm interested in doing something with honey, but I noticed that it's like in order for us to bring the honey to Guam and try to do something with it to make it more like a Guam product, we have to like flavor the honey. That's the idea I was thinking about getting into first. So I just don't have honey, I have multiple product lines. So I asked him about that, and he's telling me, oh, it's simple, and he's trying to explain to me the process, but he had to go. And so I just kind of had that bug in my brain. But still, at this point, I'm not working with honey. And we basically didn't find anything at the show. we were like looking at, that's about the time when I got into coconut oil. I was like, I'm going to do coconut oil. And so I can only focus on so many projects at a time. So that's when honey went back to the back burner again. And I came out with a coconut oil, like massaging oil kind of line. And then...
Which, by the way, you never got one for eucalyptus.
Eucalyptus.
I love the smell of eucalyptus when I'm getting a massage.
Oh, I don't think I've ever purchased eucalyptus oil, but we had started picking up some different oils to tinker with. Yeah. So we came back from that trip, and that's when I went into the coconut oil for the bath line. So at this time, we're still just kind of focusing on the bath line, the salt line, and then I was just trying to do lots of research on where I could get honey. I found honey, and now I know I have to get US grade A honey, because I asked the buyers, like, what is it that they're looking for? And because I'm like, you guys have honey here, and they're like, oh, they don't like this one's from Canada. And I'm like, but Canada's right next to US. And they're like, no, it has to say US grade A because there's a standard, and the US holds that standard. That's why China trusts it, right? And the other countries trust it because they will certify the honey. They'll do like tests on it to make sure that you haven't tinkered with it. So I was like, okay, I did some more research, found some, I brought it out. We started selling it to, I'm trying to remember who's the first one that picked it up. I think it might have been some of the hotels. They picked it up, and it did all right. But now I have a product, but I want to see what else can I do with this product, because I always want to do more than just one product line, right? And then that's a lot of times how we find our winners, so we find our losers. You just try something and see if it works. So I tried infusing it with like noni, and so we'd pick noni and stuff, and you have to learn the process, but you don't want to water down the honey, because water will ruin the honey. So then I looked into how do I dehydrate noni and stuff. Oh, but if you use heat, you destroy the properties of the noni. So we have to how do you cold dehydrate noni? So we're like doing all these stuff. Tried it out. Didn't really sell too well. But
it probably changed the taste, right?
Yeah, it changes the taste significantly.
Make it bitter?
Well, it makes the honey the noni not gross.
Oh.
So when you taste the sweetness from the honey, you're like, oh, this is an interesting honey. But it's because it's got the noni in there. Yeah.
So the noni flavor is what the people don't like.
Yep. You tried noni?
I've tried raw noni.
Noni is nasty.
It's nasty.
Yeah, and
it smells nasty.
Oh, the scent is nasty.
Yeah.
So what happened was we started looking into noni as a product. Even till now, that's a very popular product with the tourists. So that's why I was trying to think, what can I do with noni?
Because it's really helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of good properties in it, but it's awful.
Yeah, so that's what we were trying to look at, and I was like, well, I'll just try to see if I can match these up, because I had seen a company in New York doing pepper in the honey to make a spicy one. So I was like, maybe I'll try that. So I tried making a pica one. I was trying to think, what flavors can I do? So I did a pica honey.
I was going to say a dinanchi.
Yeah, so we did the noni, we did cinnamon, we did ginger, and then we're just trying to do all these different things, and we were just testing it out. And we did it at a food show, and then DFS saw it, and then they asked, they're interested in it. And then ABC saw it, and they said they're interested in it. So, I'm thinking, oh, this is a grand slam. It's like honey's great, all of these things like noni and stuff is great, and DFS wants it, ABC wants it, and they're like, as soon as you can get it to us, we want it. So put it in the stores, didn't sell.
Oh.
And so, you're out a lot of time and some money. You're out of that too, but you just chalk it up to a loss. But then when we were at the show, I noticed a lot of people asking, hey, is this Guam honey? I'm like, no, this is a US grade A honey. That's what we bring in, is US grade A. And they're like, oh, why don't you do Guam honey? And I'm like, well, we've kind of looked into that. We asked around, and there's not enough supply. And then on top of that, because there's so much time involved, and we don't have the big enough facility to where we can make production faster, which brings down a lot of costs. It's so expensive, local honey. So I'm like, and then I gotta make my cut off of it, and then the store's gotta make their cut off of it. By the time you're gonna get it, it's gonna be so expensive.
Too expensive.
No customer would buy it.
So who was asking for the local honey?
Just random people walking by at the fair.
Oh, street people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was kind of surprised, because I was like, I didn't even realize that locals would be interested in the local honey. And even at that time, I knew very little about local honey other than the one buyer who's been asking me forever to bring in this honey, right? But she was always buying from Guam Lock and Key.
Oh, yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
And so she's like, oh, you got to try it. It's very different. And I'm like, in my mind, honey is honey. You know, there's not different flavors.
Oh, yes, there is.
And then finally I tried local honey and I was like, hey, this is interesting. Why does it taste like that? And they're like, oh, that's Guam honey. I was like, hey, that's pretty good. Because I'm not a big sweet tooth. So
Right.
I was just kind of blown away. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I'm not much of a honey eater myself, but because I've tried Paul's honey, I really do like it. It's just that it's very sweet, and I'm not a sweet tooth either.
Yeah. I'm always like a salty snacker.
So am I, yeah. I like the savory snack.
Yeah, but anyway, so I was kind of interested that, like, interesting that some locals are asking about this, because to me, I never really thought too much of it.
Stay where you are. The conversation continues with Rlene Live when we come back.
What's up, fellow online addicts? I'm Asha, and it's literally my job to scour the internet every day to see what you guys are saying about our stories and to see what you're snarking on. If you got beef with a particular island issue, we'll give your voice an extra boost on Trend Spotting. It's our weekly rundown of everything that's got you buzzing and what conversations you can't look away from. From the serious to the silly, from ludicrous news to legit headlines, from the weirdest Instagram posts to the most retweeted stories to the insane DMs we get, we're going to show you the deeper side of what's making group chats, what's trending, and what you're sharing. So check out Trend Spotting on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and on IGTV, all at KUAM News. If you've got something to say, sound off. We'll find you. And now, back to your show right here on the KUAM Podcast Network.
The conversation continues now on the KUAM Podcast Network with Rlene Live.
Around that time, there was a company from Australia called, I want to say it's called Flow Hive. So they did a Kickstarter thing, and it's like this this hive that's made all out of like plastic, and the bees like loaded up with honey, and then you just like turn this key and the honey flows out. And I'm like, that's great, you know? Why don't I just invest in a ton of those, and then we can have Guam honey and I don't have to do any work, because beekeeping is a lot of work.
It is.
I'm like, that's a genius thing. I'll just buy a ton of those and problem solved. So I started looking into that, and I ordered me one. And then now I got to get bees, right? So I'm like, oh, where do I get bees? And so I was trying to find anyone or anywhere I could find bees. I couldn't get any bees from anyone. And so finally I asked Randy Quintanilla. So I'm like, hey, Randy, because he does yard work and maintenance. He's always out and about. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if ever you see bees, you let me know. Because from what I hear is I got to catch a wild swarm.
Yes.
And then he's like, I've never seen one of those. And I'm like, me neither. I said, I've been here forever. I've never seen a swarm. I'm looking it up online, and this is what they look like.
Right.
If you ever see one of these, let me know. And he's like, okay. And then I tracked down Mr. Long, because Mr. Long's the one I remember from school that did bees. So
Willie Long?
Yeah. He used to be my PE teacher, Mr. Long.
Oh.
And so I'm like, this is the my last chance I'm going to ask. So I asked him, but he's gone. He's retired. But I recognized a few of the old staff that worked there. And he's like, oh, he owns a landscaping business. And they drew me a map to his house.
Yeah.
And so I just rolled up into his house. And
Should have asked me. He does the yard right next door.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he told me that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went there, and then I asked him. And then I said, hey, can I buy one of your hives or buy something and just get my hive started? But he's like, no. He's like, I'm not really selling any bees. And he's like, but you can catch yourself a swarm. I'm like, oh. Same thing, right? Same answer. Find a swarm in the wild and catch it.
Did you ask him where you could go to catch a swarm?
Yeah, he's like, you just have to keep your ears to the ground, and like, because it's like a season that they'll be swarming, and he's like, just have your equipment ready. I'm like, oh, I've had it ready. And so
And by this time, how long have you had the equipment?
I've had it for probably about 4 months, 4 or 5 months.
Okay, that's not so bad.
And so then that's when I asked Randy. I was like, hey, Randy, if you see this, because we were crabbing at the time, we were doing some coconut crab hunting. So I was like, hey, if you see this, let me know. And he's like, okay, I've never seen that. I'm like, yeah, me neither, but we'll see. And then it just so happened the next day, there was a swarm at Randy Abid's house. And they had a family gathering. And they're passing this phone around like, hey, look at what's in my yard. And it's on his coconut tree. And I was at a dinner, and then all of a sudden,
bing,
Randy's
bing,
like
bing,
blowing
bing.
up my phone, and he's like, he shows me a picture of the swarm on the coconut tree, and I'm like, and so I had just talked to Mr. Long, so I called him up. I was like, hey, I found a swarm, and he's like, already? He's like, I didn't think you would find one for about a year, and I was like, no, I just found one. He's like, you found a swarm. He couldn't believe it either. That happened like within 24 hours, right?
Right.
I'm like, yeah. So what do I do? So he told me, he's like, come over. I'm going to explain to you how you catch the swarm. So he's trying to explain it to me. So I'm like all ready to get the swarm. I got like full on gear and my heart is pumping. Randy Abid is there too. And he's like, you got to catch it quick because it might be there only 24 hours or less.
They move.
It's going to go, right?
Right.
So I get there. He says, get there early in the morning so that you can get a chance of catching most of them before they're...
Should get it at night.
Yeah, he says before they take off, right?
Right.
So he's like, before sun comes up, you get there.
Because they harvest. They go out.
Yeah, so I went there, had my box all propped up. It's on the side of the coconut tree. Man, I'm just like full on covered. Randy's off in the distance, like trying to camcord it. And I'm thinking, as soon as I swipe them down, these are like, you think like flies. They're just going to be everywhere. And they're going to be like trying to kill everyone. And I swapped them down and they just fell into the box. And
Anticlimactic?
I was like, is that it?
What did you do?
So
did you shake something and they fell in?
That would have no, it wasn't on a branch. It was on the trunk of the tree.
Oh, how did you swipe them down?
That's why Mr. Long's like, just shake the branch. And I'm like, oh, it's on the coconut tree. So he said, cut a piece of cardboard and cut out like where the shape, a semicircle, like following the shape of the trunk of the tree. And he's like, just one time, just stiffly like knock them into the box. Now, if the queen goes into the box, then all the other bees will follow, right? And he's like, if you don't get it the first time, just wait, and they'll all reform where the queen's at and try again. So I was like, okay. So we do it, and then I'm just like surprised that's what happened. They just all went into the box, and then Randy Abid, he's surprised too. He's like, is that it? Because he's expecting, for me to. I was telling him like, hey, tell Maybelline I love her if if I die here. And then I'm like,
you get your whole body covered with them.
And I'm like, and don't show anyone that video. So then we knock it in, and he is so he's surprised nothing happened. I'm surprised nothing happened. We look in the box, and they all just kind of go into the box. So I'm like, oh, I must have got the queen.
Right.
So then we just taped it all up, put it on a truck, drove it home, set it up there, and this was right before we were going off island. And it was kind of a nightmare because a typhoon had rolled through. And my dad is trying to pick up this hive and walk it into my warehouse, and I'm just picturing in my mind like he's going to trip or something and get stung to death. And then same thing happened when we went out to U2. We went out there to do the relief work for rebuilding the homes. And
where?
In Saipan.
Oh.
Yeah, so the U2 relief. And then during that time, that's when they had the second storm rolling through. Same thing, my dad's like carrying all the hives into the warehouse. I'm like, we got to figure out a better system.
How many hives?
So by the time U2 happened, there must have been 4. I can't remember how many we've got at that time.
And your dad said, stop leaving.
Yeah, he's like, every time you leave, there's typhoons. So, yeah.
And I have to carry these things.
So, we started in January. I was like, I never expected for it to... As hard as it was to get started, I never expected for it to, take off. And I just wanted to just do it as a hobby. And then I found that from all the YouTube videos, like I would just be up at night. A lot of times I'm just doing research for product ideas and packaging ideas. And I got hooked on learning about bees. And I'd be there. And this is when May says she knew that I was onto it, like I'm going to pursue it, was because I'll be there looking at my phone and I'll pause and I'm like, hey, babe, did you know this about bees? And I'm like, I've never been like a studious child growing up, like doing studying and stuff. I was always about cartoons and, PlayStation. And now I'm like really looking into a lot of research, studying about these bees, and I find them so fascinating, like everything that they're doing, and like so purposeful. And I'll stop the video, hey babe, check this out, and I'm showing her videos. So she's like, oh no, this is gonna be his new thing.
This is real.
Yeah, so that's when I really got into it. And then we were still just at that time probably 1 or 2 hives. And then we posted, I think, around the time of our first honey harvest was going to probably be, or close to a first honey harvest. I think it was in August we caught the hive, August of last year. And then by the time it got to December, it was getting close to time where I can harvest. So I thought, you know what I want to do? If I could turn this into something that could be a business, I thought it would always be cool to document it from infancy.
Yes.
Because someone had asked me, actually tons of people always ask me, oh, we want to start our own business. How do you do it? And, you know, there's not just one way, but I thought if this could be a business, this would be a cool way to like document from the infancy. So I showed the very first photo was the cluster of bees on the side of the coconut tree. And then just through the last year, we're like, let's just start this up on Instagram and just see how it goes. Yeah, it started getting really popular. Another beekeeper, I think he's the founding member of the Beekeepers Association.
What's his name?
Chris Rosario.
Oh, Chris,
Yeah.
okay.
So he just contacted us, and he's like, hey, through Instagram, he found us, and he's like, hey, I'm a part of this Beekeepers Association. Can I add you to the chat and stuff? I'll be like, oh, that's great. So he invited me on, and then it's great, like when we were meeting all these other beekeepers, came about the time that I was just ready to harvest, right? So I harvested, and then I went over and I'm like, I'm trying to look for a label because all of my labels is from my US grade A honey, right? And so I'm like, I want to put a label on here because we were trying to do it like just handwritten style. And then everyone's like, oh, this is an ugly label. When are you going to get a new label? So I was like, okay, we'll look for a label. So I went around the island looking to all the print shops just to see if we could get some labels made. Because all the labels I get from off island, like my minimums are like 10K labels or something. And
What do you mean 10K? 10,000?
10,000, yeah.
Wow.
And then, so they do like big print runs. You're getting them cheap, high quality, but they want big investment, right? And then there's lead time. You got to wait for it to come in. And then you find out like, oh, I don't like how this looks. I'm going to change it. That's too many stickers that you just trash, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, actually, I think what we first did was we were crossing out US grade A honey and writing in, it looks so cheesy. And so they're like, you need to get a new label. And so I priced it out on island. And then I went to Hoffaday Science. And then they gave me a quote. How long can you get it done? They're like, right away. So I was like, okay, great. So these are the guys I'm going to go to. So I came back after I had my design because I have to give them a layout and everything. I came back and they're like, oh, hold on. You're the honey guy, right? And I was like, yeah. They're like, hold on, my boss wants to see you. So I was like, okay. So I'm like, where is he coming down? Oh, no, he's not here. He's driving to the shop. So I was like, okay. So I just waited. And then in comes in the owner, Rod. And so Rod's like, he's like, hey, you're the honey guy? And I was like, yeah. And it just turns out he had just got into bees at the same time as me. Ah. And so we just kind of had like a fast friendship right from there. And then we actually did our first extraction together. We found also from online. So I was like, hey, look what we saw inside of a wall. So me and him, actually May was like so game because we were doing a staycation that day. And I was like, babe, can we leave from the hotel and and do this extraction? And she's like, you're gonna leave the hotel? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and can you come and film it? So she she came, and we first started out with our suits on, but then it kind of got hot, and so we took our suits off, and she's like filming the whole process. And then so that was the first one that me and Rod did. So we split that hive. And then after that, he got a call for one. And he's like, hey, can you help me with one? And so we helped him take one out of behind, is that FD? The one in...
Thai.
So right behind there, we did one. And then, Danny Leon Guerrero.
Yes.
The
Mighty?
one... Yeah. So his house was like so many bees.
Oh, really?
I've never seen anything like that. it had probably, I think there was over 10 hives there.
Wow.
And so, you know, the soffit on the outside
Yes.
of the house
Yes.
is all that wood.
Yes.
They had built all inside there, and there was tons of hives. But the problem is that there's no crane that could get us up high enough. So we had to like look around the island. We found a crane.
Bucket
Bucket truck, but it has to be
bucket
able, can't be the one that's holding the cage. Has to be from underneath.
Oh.
So we found a guy. Turns out his brother and father, I think, used to do bees back in the day. It's like, it's great. We're finding out all these people have
They're all
bees
happening and coming
Yeah.
together.
And so even like when I was How I Met Your Nephew, Tano, Nuts and Grains had contacted us through Instagram asking if they could sell our honey. And that was great, because that was around the time when May was having to like go and drive to meet someone to like give them a bottle of honey, and then I'll have to go meet someone else, drive and meet them, and it's, her whole day is just like delivering bottles of honey. So like, man, we can't do this no more. We need to get a location. And so Nuts and Grains like that, like a couple days later, contacted us and like, hey, can we sell your honey? So we're like, oh, that solves our problems. So we started selling there. And then I was walking by, and Rod had just told me that Asiga is just opening up, and he just did their sign. He's like, hey, it's a coffee shop, why don't you ask them? So I went into Asiga, and then I said, hey, would you be interested in selling local honey? And he wasn't really interested at first, but he was like, hey, you know what, I'm really interested in bees though, because Chris helped him get bees out of his mom's house.
Who's Chris?
Chris Rosario,
okay.
the founding member of the Beekeepers Association.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it's like such a small, Guam's a small place, but like,
But all of a sudden,
Yeah,
you're in
it's-
a circle here.
yeah, and like we're meeting everyone, and somehow like bees has like affected a lot of people in one way or another. But he's like, I really want bees. And at this time, I think I probably was at maybe 7 or 8 hives. And so I said, okay, well, why don't I put a beehive at your property? And because he asked if I wouldn't mind putting one on his land. And I said, well, as long as it's not going to be like people are going to come and disturb it. He's like, no, it's very private.
Is this in Maragata?
Yeah, so he's like, can you put one up on my land? And I said, sure. And then I said, if you want, you can come with me a few times. I said, I'm still learning as we go. A lot of it, my wealth of knowledge is from other beekeepers or from YouTube. But like, you know, if you want to shadow me while we do this a couple times, which he did. And then I said, once this hive is strong enough, because I started this hive from scratch, right? I'm like, once this hive is strong enough, then you can split this hive, and then you have a hive for yourself if you're still interested. So we were just talking about that the other day, and he says that he still wants one, but he wants it at his house down south, right? So I'm supposed to be making a split for him as soon as he gets his box ready.
Okay.
So he's going to be a new beekeeper. And then, Calvin and Joanne?
Yes.
So she really wants bees.
Oh,
And she's wanted it for a long time.
Oh.
Like, she has her box, and it says Ari'i 2000, I think 2005 on it.
Really?
That's how long she's been wanting the bees, because her father used to have bees on the farm.
Oh my goodness.
And she wants Corbin to
Of
have
course.
this, yeah? It's funny, like, we never posted our faces on Instagram. We just wanted it to be its own thing. And then see, like, we don't want people to start following it because, you know, they feel obligated.
Sure.
Micah's thing, I have to follow this. So we just put it out, let it do its own thing organically.
What's wrong with that?
No, we just wanted to see how well it does all on its own, right? So then Joanne started following it, and then I told her, I was like, hey, did you want bees or something? Because she kept asking questions on the thing. And then she's wondering why I'm asking her questions.
She didn't know it
Yeah,
was
she
you.
didn't know it was me, and I was like, oh, that's my Instagram. And she's like, oh, I really want bees. She said she finally had bees that she was going to catch, and her neighbor poisoned them
Oh,
before she could catch them. And then she's never been able to catch them since.
of course.
And so I told her, okay, so we set her with some frames. I took her box to my house and then loaded it up with some bees. And then it was funny because at this time we're already doing a lot of hive extractions, taking them out of homes for people, right?
Right.
But for her, she has a duplex and she's putting it in the home.
Oh.
Yeah, because she's afraid that someone's going to steal her beehive.
Aw.
I'm like, normally we take bees out of homes. We don't put them in homes. And so I put that on the chat. They were thinking that's funny. That's the first time we're putting bees in a house.
Yeah.
So she like chambered off this room, opened up the window so they can have a flight path in and out.
Sure.
And so she's got her beehive there. She's got her suit. She's good to go. And so
She's going to teach Corbin?
yeah, she's gonna teach
Oh,
Corbin.
cool.
So
He'll be the youngest beekeeper.
yeah. So hopefully there's no allergies there.
Oh, yeah, that's
because bee
true.
allergies are nothing to play around with. But
they're
so we got her
dangerous.
set up. So hopefully, I went out there and checked on it. She said that the queen that I had given her was laying, but she couldn't find where it went. So she thinks something might have happened to it. And then just around that time, there was a farm up in Jigo that had asked us if we could put bees on their property. And they said, like, I talked to some other beekeepers and they're like, no, don't put it on the farmer's land, because I'm hearing all these horror stories. Like, some of them have been stolen. Sometimes the farmers have used pesticides and it kills all the bees. Another one had put it inside of a greenhouse, not knowing that you're not supposed to move the hive, and all the bees died. So they're like, no, don't do it. But it's my good friend that I've known since a child, and I trust him.
Well, and you have to teach him.
Yeah, and so he's like, no, we're not going to touch it. No one's going to come here. Just off in the side. So I said, okay, well, I'll use one first. We'll see how it goes, and then if it does well, then we can put another hive there. So
Okay, so let's talk about that for just a bit, because what about the pesticides that he uses to keep the other bugs at bay? If the bees go to the flowers or get the nectar from the plants, will that affect the quality of the honey?
usually it's going to kill your bees.
Okay.
And so what I was told was the way you can find out if they're using pesticides, which is killing the bees, is right in front of the hive. You'll see a lot of dead bees.
But the drones die a lot anyway.
Yeah, the drones, even like they'll kill off their own drones.
Right.
Yeah, like sometimes you'll see the bees just like kicking out all these guys.
Right. Pretty unnerving to think that you're dispensable like that, right?
Yeah, well, the drones, they don't do anything. They have no purpose other than to mate with the queen. And so they just hang around the hive all day, just eating and then not really working. They
They're
don't
dead weight?
contribute. Yeah, and so it gets to a point where they're like, okay, we don't need you guys. And
We
they
have
just,
too many.
Yeah, just kick them out.
Do they sting them and kill them?
From what I've seen, I haven't seen them stinging them. What I've seen them is they're like literally dragging them out. Like you'll see 3 bees like just dragging the drone bee out, and then they just kick him out of the hive.
And so
they're
he
like
cannot
banished.
go back in.
Yeah, they won't come back because there's actually guard bees that control what can come in and out. So
And so if they don't go back into the hive, they die?
they have no food source,
Ah.
and so what they're in there, sometimes a nurse bee will give them a little bit of food, or they got nectar and pollen all there because they don't do any harvesting or anything. And usually, once it comes a certain time of the year, they'll start kicking them out. Usually, I think it's before the rainy season.
So the moral of the story is it's not worth it being a stud, huh?
Yeah, because once they mate with the queen, they have a horrible death too.
Oh.
Yeah, so they mate with the queen, and as they're disconnecting, just all rips out. So, yeah, he's got a cushy life,
But not a long life.
A horrible ending, yeah.
Oh. That's
So
interesting.
if he doesn't do his job, he eventually will die, and if he does his job, he'll
He's
die.
going to die for
Yeah.
sure.
This is Rlene Live, and we've got more coming up in just a moment.
What's up, fellow online addicts? I'm Asha, and it's literally my job to scour the internet every day to see what you guys are saying about our stories and to see what you're snarking on. If you got beef with a particular island issue, we'll give your voice an extra boost on Trend Spotting. It's our weekly rundown of everything that's got you buzzing and what conversations you can't look away from. From the serious to the silly, from ludicrous news to legit headlines, from the weirdest Instagram posts to the most retweeted stories to the insane DMs we get, we're going to show you the deeper side of what's making group chats, what's trending, and what you're sharing. So check out Trend Spotting on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and on IGTV, all at KUAM News. If you've got something to say, sound off. We'll find you. And now, back to your show right here on the KUAM Podcast Network.
Now, more Rlene Live on the KUAM Podcast Network.
But yeah, so we put it up at the farm, and then the bees did well. Actually, they did too well, and I purposely put tons of brood in there to make this hive take off, because I wanted to hurry up and jumpstart the honey production. And I didn't check it in time. I checked it, and it's like, okay, they're ready for the second floor. When I came back, they had swarmed on me, and that was actually it was a bummer that I lost half the hive. They just took off, but when I had come back, the queens have just hatched. And so there's this thing that the bees do, and it's pretty rare, but I got the chance to hear it, and it's like almost like the queen bee is like, they call it like crying or something, and she's making this really loud noise. And
what's it sound like?
Oh, man, I can't. It's kind of like a bleeding, like a high pitch vibrating kind of sound.
Like what? Try to mimic it.
You have to look it up on YouTube.
No, we have to record it.
What is it? It's like a trumpeting kind of like a.
Is it loud?
It's not loud like where it's gonna hurt your ears,
okay.
But it's just like you can hear it.
You know it's coming.
Like if your cell phone is vibrating, it's much louder than that.
Okay.
And it's louder because the hive is all buzzing, and it's way louder than all of that.
Hive.
It goes right through. And so what it is they do that when there's more than one queen in the hive. And so that's pretty rare, because usually when the queen hatches, the first thing she does is she goes around, she kills all of the competition.
Right.
But sometimes what the bees will do is they try to separate the two queens and to avoid the conflict, just so that the two can hatch a little bit. And then sometimes one side will swarm out, or sometimes they just kind of preserve it for a little while just to keep their numbers safe. But the two queens, I think they're aware of each other, and so they're like calling out like, hey, come on.
Let's duke it out.
Yeah, what are you looking at? Kind of thing. And so when there's too much bees population in a confined space, and because of the box they can't expand it on their own,
right.
They're like, okay, it's too crowded. We're running out of space.
Hot.
Yeah, and then also a new queen, she's laying tons of eggs, right? Maybe like 2,000 eggs a day. She's just laying eggs all day. And so the population is exploding, and they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. So the old queen, there'll be like new queens that are about to hatch, and then she'll take off with half of the population. They'll swarm, they'll find a new location, and then hopefully some guy who's been looking for bees for 6 months will stumble across it and then, snatch him up. And then the new queen, she has to go out, find one of those lazy drones that doesn't do any work, and it's not usually a drone from her own hive. It's going to be from another hive, right? And that way that the genetics are always changing out. And so that's why drones' eyes.
No homogeneity in there.
Yeah, and the drones' eyes, you can spot them out because they got these giant eyes. Their eyes are bigger, so that they can have an easier time spotting the queen and flying around, right? And so she'll mate up with like several drones in one flight. And from all the times that she mates with all these drones, they all die after they mated with her. And then she stores all of that drone sperm inside of her. And throughout her life, she could live maybe 5, 6, 7 years. She's laying the eggs. And she can lay like maybe around 2,000 eggs a day. And she can tell if it's going to be a boy or a girl by choosing to add the sperm to her egg before she lays it.
Wow.
So if it's going to be a drone, which is a male bee, then she lays an unfertilized egg. And then it'll grow to be a drone. And then if she needs a worker bee, which most of the hive, maybe over 90% is going to be female, then she fertilizes it. And then it's going to grow up to be that.
So worker bees are females?
Yeah. So almost the whole hive is female.
What percentage drone to the females?
I would say less than 5%, but it fluctuates. So that's one of the ways you can identify if your hive is going to swarm. There'll be a lot of drones in there. And then you're like, oh no, there's a lot of drones. Now you start looking for, is there also queen cells, And then you can tell they're about to swarm.
So when you see that, do you have to add the frames?
Yeah, you got to continue to give them more space, but you don't want to give them too much space because there's not enough bees to take care of everything, right? So you just try to give them a little bit more than what they need. You got to anticipate their needs. And if they swarm on you, then usually it's because you haven't been checking and you haven't had time to give them more space.
What is a comfortable population size?
Well, I've been told recently that my beehives are getting too strong and that I need to cut it back, because that's why I have, like, right now it's swarm season, and I had like 3 hives that want to swarm on me, and one that did up in Jigo, right? And I'm like opening them up, and there's like queen cells everywhere. And I mean, yes, I get another hive, but you're also slowing down your honey production, right?
Right.
So I think they said strong hives can range between like 60 to 80,000 bees in a hive. But that's like a really strong hive.
And how many?
They have nukes, which are 5-frame. And then they have 10-frame boxes, which is mostly what I'm running is 10-frame. And they also have 8-frame. And then they also have like the large size, which is about 9 inches tall. And then they'll have mediums, which are about maybe 6 inches tall, 5-something inches tall.
So you don't have skyscraper hives?
I think the highest one I have is probably like 4 right now. And the top chamber is I'm just putting in some honey scraps for them, like the wax that I've squeezed out all the honey. I just let them clean it all up. And they do such a great job cleaning honey. Like if you put honey on top of the wood, they will clean it to where it's no longer sticky. Like there's no more residue.
They don't waste anything.
Yeah, they don't waste anything. Because like the normal bee will last, probably on Guam its lifespan is maybe like, let's say 8 weeks, just slaving away. They work themselves to death, and they'll produce, I think, like 1/24th a teaspoon of honey. Whereas we don't have winter here, but in places where they have winter, during that time they're dormant, and they can live throughout the whole winter because they're not working, right?
They're not working.
But then once it comes for production season, they just work themselves to death.
Is that where the term comes from?
I
Work
don't know.
yourself to death?
Maybe, I don't know.
Worker bee?
Yeah, worker bee. They're
So,
true to their name.
Let's go back a little bit to the labeling. When you realized that you could only market
U.S. grade A.
to the Asian market, they're not interested in the Guam produced honey?
I don't think that they're really educated on it, because there's not too many honeys in the world that are like famous, right? You've got U.S. grade A honey, which is famous. The other one that's very famous is also Manuka honey, which comes out of like New Zealand, and it's supposed to be very good health properties and stuff. But Guam's not on the map for honey production for any special reason. And to me, the flavor is way better than any other honey I've tasted, but we don't have the research showing like it's the most healthiest, like Manuka honey or things like that. So
There's no testing on it.
yeah, and there's not enough testing that's been done on it. So, and once that's done, you still got to educate the consumer market and tell them that, like, why do you need Guam honey? Why is it the best? So yes, they might come here thinking like, I want to try something new, but a lot of times when people want to get local honey for health benefits, it's good to get the local honey where you live. Because what happens is when you take local honey, you're actually microdosing pollen and things that will make your allergies act up. But if you're buying it on a place you're going on vacation, you come home and you take local honey, it's not that local honey is not your local area, right? And so it's not going to help you out with your allergies.
So the pollutants are in your
Yeah.
area. You need to get the honey in your area.
So a lot of the ones who are interested in getting unprocessed, unheated, local raw honey for health benefits, they're the customer that's educated on that, they're going to get it from where they live. And so actually Fruciano is the one who told me about that, Jared Fruciano.
Right.
We went out to New York, and he was popping Claritin every day, and because of allergies. And so in the morning he started taking a teaspoon of honey, local honey that's been unprocessed from a local beekeeper there, and he said he started getting a reaction in his throat, and then after that it would clear up, and he never had allergies. And so he's like, I'd rather take a teaspoon of
Absolutely,
honey in the
than
morning than
Claritin.
popping pills, right?
Yeah. So I also have allergies, and I blame Nimetil for it because I never had allergies until I moved up here. And since I moved up here, I'm reliant on nasal sprays. I used to take Claritin, but it didn't work for me. I was on Dimetap, and then went to something else that was prescribed. And so as I talked to you, I don't think I ever really read about the infusion of honey and all the pollutants and from the pollen and everything. But I'm going to try that. I'm going to try and take a teaspoon of honey in the morning.
Yeah, and then they said if you actually feel something, then that's you're reacting to the pollen in the honey.
Yeah.
So even Kendall Williams in our hall. So he was going through this phase recently where his allergies were like super acting up, and
Yes.
he's like, he said he had to go home and wash his eyes, like he couldn't keep his eyes open.
My eyes were swollen
Yeah.
for 2.5 to 3 weeks.
And so he was looking for local honey, and then so I just gave him some, and he said that his allergies cleared up.
Whoa.
And so I said, that is possible that it's from the honey because, that's what they
Right.
say it can do. But I said, maybe also it was just something that was passing through Guam. But I said, I'm not sure. And he's like, just take the compliment, man. I'm trying to
Yes,
tell you, your
really.
honey fixed me.
So when
yeah.
I came back this last trip from Saipan, for 2.5, 3 weeks, my eyes were swollen. They were bloodshot red, painful. I couldn't work. I mean, it was almost embarrassing because I needed to sleep all the time to relieve the swelling. And I had to take pictures of it to show people this is really what... Because, most people get over a cold or whatever. And here I was 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm milking this problem. But it really was allergies. And I'm just now clearing out of it. But tomorrow I'm going to try. I've got Paul's honey in the cupboard, and I'm going to try it.
Yeah. They said, it doesn't take much. And it's interesting.
Maybe I'll try it before I go to sleep and see what happens.
There was, I think it was just starting this year. I forget if it's the U.S. or the U.K. One of those, the big pharmaceuticals finally got the permission to start testing microdosing.
Right.
On, I think it's like peanut and eggshell allergies. Because they said the science is there if they just start giving really small doses to build up tolerances.
Right.
Because those are the kind of allergies that kill people.
Yes.
And so
the peanuts especially.
Yeah, the peanuts and the eggshell, and so they're saying tons of people suffer from this.
Right.
The science is there, so now they're starting testing on it. And it's that's what people have been doing forever with honey, right?
Right.
Yeah, they've been microdosing.
Right.
So now it's...
So do you have to take it multiple times, or
well,
you have to take it once a day?
The one who turned me on to it, he takes it every morning, a teaspoon in the morning.
Every day.
Yeah. But there's worse things.
Well,
I'd
that's
rather
true.
take some
honey. The only reason I hesitate is I honestly don't like sweet things. You know, I'm not a sweet tooth, so I would prefer to eat a pickle.
Spicy pickle, yeah.
Yeah,
pickle
spicy.
mango.
Yeah.
But you know what, the local honey, what surprised me is, to me, it's not as it is very sweet, but it's like a light sweet. It's very floral. And it doesn't taste like the stateside honey, which kind of just tastes like sugar syrup.
Right,
In my opinion,
right.
it tastes like sugar syrup, right? And so even the guy who...
It tastes like Aunt Jemima syrup.
Yeah. And so the guy who had bought my old business, Juan, I was very happy to offer him some honey, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, hey, man, check this out. This came from my hive. And he's like, oh, I don't like honey. And so I said, okay, well, then for your family. And then he said when he tasted it, he says he doesn't like the normal honey,
Right.
but he said he loves that honey.
I was going to say, I don't think I'd use the floral as a description to the honey, but it almost tastes like, what is the, it's not walnut, it's something else in syrup. It's the thick brown.
Like molasses style?
Not molasses. Molasses is a little more bitter, but it has a body. It has some kind of, like maple. It's almost like mapley,
but
creamy.
One thing I've noticed is, and it's strange because I didn't know this before, but even the honey on Guam, just different areas, has drastically some different flavor profiles.
Oh, okay.
And it's funny because when I was first observing my bees, they all follow a same flight path, right? They all know where to go. And then I'll come out the next week and they're all going a different direction. And so you don't know what they're getting into. Sometimes you'll look on a frame, I'll pull up a frame and it's all one color. And on the same frame, it's a completely different color.
The pollen.
No, the honey.
The honey?
Yeah.
But it's because pollen driven.
Oh, yeah. So their nectar source is a different source, right?
Right.
And so, what I like to do is, in my harvest now, what I do is I'll find the best looking frames that I can find, lightest in color, try to get mostly capped. And then usually what will happen is, if it's all from a brand new wax, this is the first time they used a virgin wax, they built it out, never had anything in it before, it comes out a very light honey. And so I would always extract that and then do it in the spinner first And then what I'll do is all the other honeys, then I'll do it. And so we have separate right now. You can taste the differences in the honeys. And so even though it's
so
from
you're
one
using color code to make that determination.
So when I'll look at it, I'm like, okay, so this is like an amber color. This one is a very light yellow color. And then some of them where it's like split in half, I'll put that in towards the amber side. And then I'll harvest all the light first. Then I'll run in the amber shade next. And then just this last time, maybe 3 days ago, I harvested. And when I saw it, I tasted it. Normally, I always like the light color more. Because to me, it's very light. And the taste, I don't know. To me, this light one tastes very floral. And then the next one I tasted, it tasted to me like amaretto or like an almond flavor.
Okay, maybe that's what I like that one more. I'm more nutty-ish.
Yeah.
I want to say nutty. That's so, really the...
I asked Ma'am, like, taste this, and does it have like a cherry almond flavor? And she tried it, and she said, oh yeah, that's different. She's like, where's that from?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's from the same hive, but just...
different color.
Yeah, so who knows what they got into that day, but...
Yeah. Okay, so... the label that you used for the USDA, you don't use that for the local honey.
So when we first got it, we were just taking permanent marker. When I didn't have any labels, we scratch out the USA honey and write in Guam. Then we started saying, okay, what we'll do is we'll do a blank label. And so it just has a logo. And then we can write in, we can like say, hey, what village it came from and everything, and make it very personal. We can write it off to so-and-so. And we're writing a whole bunch of these labels. And then someone told me like, man, that looks so unprofessional. Actually, one of the stores told me, don't bring that in anymore until you get real labels. I'm like, but this has like a home feel to it, right? So we switched it to real labels, and then everyone else was like, hey, what happened to the handwritten labels? So it's like, you can't make everyone happy, right?
No, you can't.
But I have to make the store happy.
Because they're buying it from you.
Because they're the ones who's going to be putting on the shelf. So
well, maybe you can do that for like the Mango Festival when you have a booth or something, and
maybe
personalize it for the local.
Sometimes the customers will call us and like, hey, can you write it out to my name? And so we're like, yeah, okay. Well, we still have the blank labels, right?
Right.
But so when we first started, we were just doing the U.S. grade A for the tourist market. And even if we wanted at this point, we don't have enough honey, local honey, to even attempt. And we've had a few of our customers in Tumon, and they want the local honey. And I'm saying it's expensive, and they're like, it's fine, we still want it. And I'm like, I don't have enough to supply you. And they're like, okay, we'll wait until you do. But that's pretty rare because most of the time they don't want to go through the work of setting up SKUs, setting up barcodes, allotting a space if it's going to be there for a day and then it's an empty shelf after.
Right.
So they're like, well, how much can you supply? How many hundreds of bottles? I'm like, I can't supply hundreds of bottles. So they're like, okay, well, wait until you can. That's something that's very new because before it's just getting out as much product as possible. But now a lot of the companies like... even the hotels, they're more about like we're trying to help sustainability. Like it was awesome. We were working with Chef Mirko the other day, and he said that he stopped serving foie gras, right? Foie gras. That's the geese liver that they force feed. He said they stopped doing it because of the inhumane treatment of animal.
Oh.
Because what they'll do is they'll just, it's like it's done eating and they just keep force feeding it, right?
Right.
The geese. And so he said like that was on his menu forever because that's traditional like fine dining.
Right.
And everyone loves it. It's super delicious. But he said he had to make a choice. Like, is this going to be something I'm going to continue to do and try to be like going green, sustainable, organics, And so he's like, he scrapped it from his menu. So that was a decision that, like an ethical decision he made. And so we can see that now people are taking in these kind of things into consideration. Yeah. It's not just the make the sell kind of thing.
Right.
Don't go away. There's more coming up with Rlene Live on the KUAM Podcast Network.
Middle of the ocean, but this paradise is teeming with people with all sorts of amazing abilities.
Bonita Baby was nothing but hair accessories. I had some little barrettes that we were making and headbands, our little like knit bow headbands, and that's all I started out with. And I decided shortly after, I had been sewing for a little while that I was going to put it out there.
Whether it's artists who create visual masterpieces, creatives inspiring others, people who compose and perform moving pieces of music, athletes taking their game to the next level, or entrepreneurs coming up with innovative solutions. There are a ton of folks here doing incredible things with their gifts, and I want to introduce them to all of you.
Women, not just guys, women could come in and feel like they're there to train, they're going to be taken serious, they're not going to be hit on by dudes, they're going to have their own space. You know what I mean? They're going to be respected as just another practitioner of this martial art.
I'm Jonagan Charfris, and I invite you to join me on the KUAM Podcast Network for Fistful of Talent, where I sit down with people discussing their visions and dreams and sharing the secrets of their success.
In the avenues of being in the creative life, and then what's the next thing?
Just subscribe to the KUAM Podcast Network on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcatcher platform, and prepare to be amazed. That's Fistful of Talent each and every Friday. Thanks for listening. And now, let me get you back to your show.
Now, back to the conversation with Rlene Live.
Okay, so the only reason, Micah, that I'm still pressing on this is I'm wondering if the customers really care. I am surprised that Asian tourists are that hooked on U.S. products. Do you see that to be with other products too, or just with the honey?
I think it's not just the honey. So I'm not a big stock guy, but I like to invest in stocks. I enjoy that and learning about companies and stuff. And so one of the stocks I've been following forever is Apple. And then once I got to the 10, the way I would always track Apple's sales with China was I would be on a subway and I would look how many people are using Apple. Now everyone's using like Android. They started using Samsung, and I was getting a little nervous about Apple, right? And then all of a sudden Huawei came out, and now everyone's using Huawei. So I went up to Shenzhen, which is like where all the electronics happen in China. And then I was meeting with the guy there, and I just asked him, like, what's the deal with Apple? Why is Apple not doing well here? And he said, with all the Chinese, Apple was still the gold standard. He said everybody wants Apple, but they can't afford it because the price is so expensive, and they don't have the deals like we have here in the U.S. with contracts and subsidies. If you're going to buy a phone, you're going to buy it outright. And it's usually
unlocked and outright.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to drop $1,000. Whereas here in the state, in Guam or in the States, you just like re-up your contract and you get it for like $200.
Right.
So they still want U.S. made products. That's like the gold standard.
And that's for all Asian markets: Korean, Japanese, Chinese.
For a long time, Korea was like that. Like everyone's dream is to come to the States and roll in Cadillac. Now that's kind of changing. Now it's like you see a lot more going towards Lexus, right? But that's with the Koreans they're all rolling in the RX. But that was the original mentality is US is the good standard, right? Even back in the day, Japan, their product was actually kind of viewed like made in China. It had a really bad rep. And then they just upped their game and they're like, we're setting a high standard. And now a lot of us, we like Japanese-made products, right? We see it.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because I see people too making choices. I'm an Apple. I have Apple computers. I have an Apple cell phone. I'm married to that. I mean, I wasn't at first, and my son-in-law Paul and I, that's how we met, because I was a PC user. But I've crashed so many PC computers doing the work that we're doing that now there's just I've got religion on that item, right? But when I see people, when they move to a non-Apple product like a cell phone because the camera is better or because the face of the phone is larger, they have a larger screen looking, it's like that's almost like an iPad then,
Yeah.
You don't want your phone to be an iPad.
And I don't know if your listeners are going to be torn over this, but I'm Samsung.
Right?
And I'm thinking about going back to Apple.
Oh, no. You have to go back to Apple.
Because Apple's got the watch. Samsung's watch is garbage.
Yeah.
the AirPods. The Apple's got all the good stuff in their ecosystem, so I may switch back.
Apple's infrastructure. You can cross-platform. You can sync.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk to each other. How can you be that?
And then even when I switched over, it was by accident. Like I had crushed my phone, and then I went back, and I was like, oh, they didn't have the Apple that I wanted. It wasn't coming out yet. So I was like, just give me like a Samsung in the meantime.
Yeah, I struggle with having to go up to 11 because, I got a 10 plus, I think, or something like that, and I'm really happy.
No, you're gonna move up. I know it. You know why? Because the 11 Pro, you are all about taking awesome photos.
Yes,
and
I
that
am.
one is got like really great lenses.
Yeah,
on it.
but I would never use a cell phone to take a picture of a bird because I need to get right up to that bird. As a matter of fact, Ryan Vicente in Saipan, he asked me all of a sudden recently, I feel vindicated in some way because I share my photos of the birds. You know that, right? And I want to teach people that we have birds. Okay, they may not be on Guam, but there's still birds on Guam.
Yeah.
And people go, where'd you see this? I take them out. They can't believe that the birds are there. They're not looking for them. So like your swarm, they're there. You just have to look for them, right?
That's like the bad rap that Guam has about the brown tree snakes. Oh, there's no more birds. And then Jeff Flores told me that they had a problem up in the Anderson's flight path.
Right.
Because there's like thousands of birds like going up into the plains.
But the birds that are on the flight path are usually migratory birds. And we have the same problem up at Wampat. They like it's open area, and so there's a lot of birds that go there, mostly migratory or the kak-kak. But anyway, Ryan texted me the other day and he said, Rlene, may I use your bird photos as models for my drawings? And I said, absolutely. They're not my birds, right? The photo's mine, but at least he asked.
Yeah.
Right? And then the irony was I was so motivated by that text. And when he's so progressive. Every time he updates the sketch, he'll send it back to me. He'll send it to me in WhatsApp and I'm looking at it and I thought, oh, I want to do this, right? So it just so happened I got this flyer from Cornell Lab. It said that there was this journaling course and if I would like to participate, well, I got sucked in with the $79. I said, really? That's a great price for a 10-hour course, right? Then I had to order my supplies. And that came up to almost $300. My pad just came in because the supplies that I need, I want to make sure I'm using what the course is using. I don't want to have to just go downtown here. They might have it here, but it was so much easier for me to just buy it on Amazon. So my supplies are now coming in and he finished the egigi, which is the honey eater with the red honey eater, and now he's sketching the Mariana's kingfisher, and he does such a great job.
Yeah, I saw he.
Oh my goodness!
When we were up there, he was showing me his artwork that he was doing.
Portfolio?
And he was doing a lot of faces at the time. But so they were showing me the pictures, but even like the photography.
Yes.
So
Russell is the photographer.
Yeah.
And because he and I have done things together, but Ryan is the other one.
Artist?
He's the artist.
Okay.
You know what I'm wondering now if both of them they're very artistic.
Yeah. So the one that he was showing me was his drawings.
Okay, maybe.
And it's like very good, and so
incredible.
So the one you're going to be doing is online course, or?
Yes, I'm doing an online course. So, but the course has started. But I contacted the professor and I said, "Listen, I have to order my things. I'm in Guam. I'm not going to be able to do it." So I did reach out, and she said, "Don't worry. You can always log in. You can do it at your pace and whatever." And so I actually started on my own with just a line pad. And I was very surprised at but I want to splash a little color on there, watercolor. Yeah. And I have all those pictures of the birds, and I want to do something with it. I want to publish a book. I just want to educate people that the birds are here.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if the birds are like a nemesis to the bees.
So a bird can go after the bees, and that's not going to be a problem because you've got like tens of thousands of bees.
Right.
How many bees can these birds eat? The problem is when they go after the queen when she's on her mating flight. And so sometimes your queen is out there, she's on her mating flight, and the hive is depending on her to come back, and then a bird will come and just eat them up, you know?
Yeah, but if a queen is missing or dead, don't the bees make a queen?
What they'll do is, while the queen is there, the first queen, before she swarms, she will make several queens as like backup. But what can happen is, if all the queens are gone, she's out on her mating flight, she comes back, they can't make a queen, because all of the females, they can lay eggs, but they're unfertilized eggs, which will always be male. And so that's sometimes a problem, and you can see it like if you're looking in a hive and you see like a whole bunch of sloppily laid eggs instead of one perfectly in the bottom of each cell, then that means you got a laying worker. Now what happens is, the reason why the workers never lay is because the queen puts out a pheromone which like shrivels up all of their ovaries, kind of thing, so no one else can lay while she's around. Yeah, but when she's gone, then one of them will be like, okay, I'm going to start laying now. So sometimes that happens, but you know, if you're checking your hives regularly, you see it in there, oh, I don't have a queen here, then what you can do is you can take a frame of eggs, freshly laid eggs from another hive, and put it in, and then the bees will take, they'll make a queen cell, they'll take the egg out, stick it up in there, they'll transfer it, right, and then they'll start feeding it royal jelly, which will turn it into the queen. So if you provide them the egg, the fertilized egg, then they can make it.
What does that term mean, queen bee?
You mean like bee terminology, or like in slang?
Oh, there's a difference?
No, just joking.
Not slang. I'm not interested in that.
So like in the bee terminology, what does it mean to be the queen bee?
Okay, so when there is a queen bee, there are still other bee queens?
At the very beginning when they're being born. But there's only one queen per hive. Okay. Yeah, and there can't be more than one queen per hive, because they'll eventually like seek each other out, and one will die. Or one will
kill them? Will they kill them?
Yeah, the two queens will fight. And if you're introducing a new queen and the hive's not ready to take her, they're not used to her scent, then the hive will kill her. So what they'll do is they'll normally put her in a cage, block it with some sugar or like a marshmallow or something, and as the bees are trying to get to her, they're eating the sugar away, then they're getting used to her scent, and by the time she comes out, she's good to go.
Interesting. Now, Kenny Pangilinan, another beekeeper, posted something the other day he was showing all the different colors, which is what you're talking. Is that wax?
I don't know. I didn't see
they were like white and yellow and red and all kinds of different colors, and it looked like, I don't know what he was holding up it
was on a frame?
Frame.
Oh, okay. So sometimes when you look at a frame and it's all different colors, what that is it's pollen, or they'll call it bee bread. So that's the food source for the bees. So what they'll do is they'll go out, they'll gather these pollen. They have pollen sacks on their back legs,
right? That's
and you'll
cute.
see it, right? You got these big old, they like cargo pants or something,
right?
And then they bring back this pollen, and it's the funniest thing trying to watch them take the pollen off. It looks like someone that's trying to take off their socks, and they're just going like this, and they rub their legs together and they put it inside the comb, and then they'll mix it in with a little bit of honey. So then it's a different substance now, right? So you got honey and pollen mixed together, and they pack it up, and that's the bee bread.
Okay, so then that's bee bread that I saw.
Yeah, because so it's basically pollen, yeah.
Yeah, they look like little balls.
Yeah, so those little balls are the pollen.
Okay, so why do you take that out of the comb? What do you do with the bee bread?
Normally that's going to be down in the brood box where all the bees live. That's their food source. So most of the time you just leave that for them, because they need that to eat, and we just take the honey. But I know that is very trendy, like in Russia. They take that out and they eat it because it's very nutritious, right? It's like, but you can make your own bee bread. Sometimes what they'll do is take pollen and honey and mix it together, and you just keep mixing it back and forth, and then now you have like a very protein, pollen heavy honey substance.
And that's probably going to alter the taste of that honey too.
Yeah. So like even pollen sometimes has a little bit, to me it tastes like granola.
Right.
Like a granola kind of flavor. But pollen, you're not supposed to eat too much of it because it's kind of potent stuff, especially if you have allergies. But a little bit of it can help you with your allergies. So sometimes
in doses.
Yeah, just a little bit. Sprinkle it on top of your salad. Put it in your acai bowl on top of your yogurt.
So are you surprised that you enjoy doing this and that you've learned so much and you've actually become studious?
I think I am surprised with myself because I'm the kind of guy that doesn't read instructions. And I don't have a long attention span. I mean, I enjoy nature, but usually my version of like going out to be with nature is it's purpose driven. Like I want to go spearfishing. I want to, I'm not going to be like taking pictures of the fish. I want to catch the fish, or I'll go even like trolling, rod and reel. I enjoy fishing, so this is kind of interesting to me that this is something that I enjoy.
Yeah, but when you fish, do you do the same study with the fish? You want to know what kind of fish they are, where they spawn, where they come from? Are they pelagic? Are they reef? I mean, did you spend the same kind of time
Not
understanding?
Nearly, yeah.
Okay, so why is this different?
I think what surprises me, well, it shouldn't surprise me, but what fascinates me is the order. There's so much order, and it makes so much sense. Like one thing and like the things that the bees do is just amazing. So like if you think about it, if you're in a congested city, the more people that is going to be in this city, the less efficient it will be. And that's just how everything is, right? The more crowded you have of something, the less efficient it becomes. With bees, the larger the population, if you have one mega hive, will be more efficient than 2 hives that have been split of the same. And so it's just amazing how that kind of works, right? The thing that I find so fascinating is like in the comb itself, if you look at the pattern, everything is almost exactly the same, and everything I think goes up almost like at 15 degrees. And so all the cells are all pitched at the same angle. Well, why is that? It's because when they put in honey, when they're putting in nectar, it's still watery, right? And so once it gets to the point where it's filling up, it's drying out at the same time and won't spill out.
Interesting.
So they're all just been...
So the combs are at 15 degrees?
I think... you're going to have to check with Paul on that. He probably knows all the accurate facts. But
all the numbers.
Yeah. So they're pitched, I believe it was at 15 degrees so that the honey won't spill out, right? And so that's why when we're doing transplants, you need to put it in the same orientation that you've taken it out. But it's just like, it was put there in their brains. It was all designed,
Of course, all by design.
And so the more that I'm learning about these things, I'm like, man, this is so amazing how all of this stuff works. And
does it give you more appreciation for your God?
Yes, there's like so much that like you can learn from it, right? And so that's one of the ways that we learn is just by observing creation. And then you're like, oh wow, that's something that's amazing, right?
I find the same thrill when I observe the birds, their behavior, their attention to their environment, and the fact that they have a mission. They're always preening, they're always eating, they're always looking around, they're totally alert, and they're never in danger because of that.
Do you have the same affection that you have or interest in birds as you do in chickens, or do you feel that like they get a lot less?
I don't like chickens.
I love chickens.
Stay where you are. The conversation continues with Rlene Live when we come back.
Buenas and Hafide. I'm Lacey Martinez Francisco. If you're hungry or have a passion about everything food, then I've got just the show for you, with me. Each week I bring you Foodie Call, a show about all aspects of how we Guamanians enjoy our cuisine, preparing it, consuming it, sharing it, using it as social currency, and talking endlessly about it. We also profile people in our community who are masters of their crafts in working with food. Whether you eat with your eyes or can't wait to fill your stomach, or if you're a perfectionist about the process, you'll enjoy Foodie Call right here on the KOAM Podcast Network. So lock in our show by subscribing to our feed on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, or on your favorite podcatcher platform, and get our freshest episodes delivered right to your device when we're done cooking them. We'll see you then, and we'll make you a plate.
Now, back to the conversation with Rlene Live.
Well,
you know what?
I loved a chicken.
Okay. A chicken? You have a chicken that is your pet?
I had one chicken that we named her Lady Fluffy Bottom.
Lady Fluffy Bottom.
And she was the best chicken. She was like a dog. Like I could hold up parts of my Subway sandwich and she'd fly up and take it from my fingertips.
Oh, okay, so you had a pet.
Yeah, she laid like these big brown eggs. But
Well, I was born in Tamuning, but grew up in Chalampago, so that's country, right? And my grandmother had a walkway to her front door, and there were chickens all over Chalampago. So when we would come up to visit her, we'd have to dodge the poop all over, and I hate watering it down. I don't like the smell. So chickens, I don't care for, and I don't like fresh chicken soup. I don't like the taste, the
like the stewing.
The stewing, ew, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Now, I like chicken, but
Yeah.
I don't like fresh. I don't even like the smell of it's too gamey for me.
Especially the stewing chicken, man.
Yeah. But fresh chicken is worse than stewing chicken.
Oh, okay.
I just don't like it. I don't like the smell. But yeah, and they are fowl, so they are birds by definition, but I'm not fascinated with them because we don't have a lot of variety here, and they're not that pretty, and they all look so scrawny, and they make noise.
Yeah. So what's the bird that you're like? That's like your go-to.
I don't have a favorite bird. I find that when I'm out birding, I'm in a totally different world. It's just nothing else matters. I could sit for hours and take pictures of the birds and watch them, how they move around, how they interact with each other. I'm always fascinated that they don't crash into each other.
Honestly, that's what I think was the biggest appeal to me about the bees, was that I tune out of everything else, because like I was saying, like when I'm watching TV, I'm also got my phone or a tablet in my hand and I'm working, or when I'm out shopping, like on vacation, I'm still like trying to think of ideas and stuff. But when you're in working with the bees, you got to be in the zone. You got to listen to the bees. You're constantly like, you're looking for the queen. You're looking for how the health of the hive is. You can't answer your phone, and so it's like I just kind of step away from everything, and then it just gives me a break. And
the pleasure is indescribable for me. And before, when I drive to a birding station or location, I always call Bob first, or I'll text Bob and I'll say, okay, I'm out birding and I'm here, and I will text you back when I leave, because I don't know how long I'm going to be there. But I need to let him know where I'm at, because I'm in the jungle or I'm down south, or and he needs to know where I'm at. And I can't do it with other people because they want to talk, or they can't keep. No, but seriously, when you're birding, you have to concentrate, and the birds know you're there. So your movements have to be minimized. I don't even turn on the music because they are totally aware of everything. And I'm actually thinking of buying a head mask. One of the brothers in Tinian was wearing it when we went fishing to protect himself from the sun. And I thought, that's something I should do. Camouflage as much of me as possible so that the birds are not, they forget that I'm there. If I'm in my truck, I'm not a threat. Mm-hmm. If I get out of my truck, I'm a threat. So I've learned to stay in the truck, roll the window down, get as close as I can to an angle where my camera is situated such that I can take their pictures, and I just lose myself in their activities.
Is there a community of what would you call it, birders, or what
there is a community of birders, but they usually get together at the end of the year and count birds. Mm-hmm. But birders, it's a very isolated hobby.
Maybe that's the one of the best things about it, though.
That's what I like about it. Yeah. It gives me time to get away from my regular work, which is most of what I do is original thought. I read, look at all the books behind you in the library, right? I'll read what I have to read, and then I have to get away from it for a while, and it's almost as if my brain defrags. Does that make sense? It starts to defrag. It starts to sort things out. Clearing things up. And when I'm out there, I'm not aware of it, but when I'm out there, I'll be stumped on something, and then all of a sudden I think, of course, because I've had time to step away from it. It's right there, but when I step away from it. So yeah, birding is very therapeutic for me.
Yeah, it's good that I think it's good for everyone to have something like that. Probably back in the day, everyone did it all the time, right? Because a lot of times your job was like, if you were doing something in agriculture or something like that, you're going to have time to naturally do that. And now that we've got these new lives that everything is, we have a phone in our hand at all times of the day. We always have something to distract us. We don't have time to just sit there and process. So it's probably very healthy for us mentally.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this journaling course because I've kept journals most of my life, but they're word journals. You know, my mom started me on it when I was about 10. And I've interrupted the journaling many, many times, but it's something I really enjoy doing. I like right? I like to write, and I did the columns in all the newspapers, and of course I did 10 years of the radio show. But I've learned that my grandchildren like to draw. And I thought, what a way to do this. I'll first learn how to journal and then turn them on to that, because Gabriel's now learning how to play piano and he's very good at it. Kamea is also like me, where she can entertain herself. She doesn't need other people to entertain her. She gets involved in things. She's very organized about what she does, you know, kind of like Tara. And then there's Zoe, and Zoe's just, you know, she's a baby right now, so she's in everyone's way and demanding all the attention. But she's very mindful of things, and she likes to do things herself. So I'm thinking if I jumpstart this and get into it, I can turn them on into journaling. They don't have to do birds, but something, right?
Yeah. And then, you know, to expose them to as much stuff as possible.
Absolutely.
Who knows what's going to come of it. You said your mom exposed you to journaling when you were 10.
Yeah.
And then you kind of turned into a career for you.
Yeah. So. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Micah, this has been wonderful. I really enjoy this. I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner.
No, it's okay. I'm having fun too.
And I appreciate.
Sorry, my throat's a little dried out.
That's okay. You need to train your vocal cords.
Yeah. And also we were at Carabao. It's like the acoustics are so loud.
Oh, yeah.
So we're all shouting at each other to hold a conversation.
That's why I don't like going to those things. So where are you going to go with this now? How far is this going to take you? Do you have any immediate plans? Or are you going to help other people to do this? Is there a way that we can get our honey certified, tested? Are we going to go there? Do we need to go there?
Well, I think it would be good probably in the future to have some kind of like to know what's the benefits of the honey here, if there's anything special. But I think that's probably going to be later on in the future once production is up. There's actually a wealth of source of experience and knowledge from all the beekeepers here in Guam that they can contact, probably like Chris for the beekeepers community, and everyone has insights and we're learning things from each other all the time.
I remember the question that I forgot. What are the genetics about the bees on Guam?
So as far as I know, from what I've been told, we have the Italian bee here, which is very good because its temperament isn't so bad. And I've heard different stories about how the bees came to Guam and different theories about how the bees came to Guam. One of them was I heard that there was a farmer who brought them from Florida. And then another one I've heard is that the Germans brought it when they were trying to build up the agriculture in Saipan. So I'm not too sure what's the truth or
maybe both.
Yeah.
Let's assume that that's true. If they brought it to Saipan, they would have managed to come here?
Probably not through flight, but they were saying that they thought maybe that it was brought over by someone, or that maybe a swarm had built onto a boat or something and made its way over. So I'm not too sure about the real history about how the bees made it to Guam. But yeah, and then some of the ways that at least with me, what I'm trying to do just help other beekeepers is if they have any questions, I always try to refer them to the ones who know more than me. And then like if they need bees, I've kind of told them that I can help them to get started. I can't help everybody, but I'm currently trying to help some, like Tano. I'm going to be setting him up with a hive, and Sister Rlene. And a lot of the times, I think all of us, like even if there's going to be a big extraction, sometimes that's a lot of work for one person. So we just team up and we go and help each other out, and then help get the job done, pull the bees out, and then whoever's hive that spotted or whatever, they just take the bees.
So we know for a fact then that the bees on Guam are all one gene.
I believe so. I believe it's all from the Italian bees, yeah.
Okay.
And it's kind of good. I think that's actually one of the best things about Guam is how isolated we are, because the rest of the world has got a lot of disease and mites and problems with the bees. And Guam is one of the remote places that the bees are still very healthy.
What about the threat of the hornet?
That is also a problem. So that one, the hornets have been coming to Guam. There's been some efforts to try to eradicate them, hunt them down. So those hornets, it's called the greater banded hornet.
The greater banded.
Yeah, it's like all black. It's probably about the size of, a little bit smaller than my pinky, and they're all black with this bright stripe, orange stripe across the butt, and they like to prey on the bees.
How bad is that population? Is it under control?
It's not under control, and I heard that it's much worse up north. Some of the beekeepers have lost hives to them. Like, they'll just swarm the hive and just kill everything. I think all the beekeepers on Guam are having sightings of them. So, like, every day, a few of them, I go out there with my Zori, and I'm just standing in front of my hive swatting at these things. And then, a lot of them, they're just catching with nets. Chris Rosario, right now, he ordered these little transmitters. And what he wants to do is try to catch the hornet, put them in the refrigerator till they fall asleep, glue it to the abdomen, and then just let them go.
So they can trace
and then
them.
track them to the nest.
To the nest.
So hopefully that will work when it comes. So the hive that we set up for Asiga, your nephew, that one, they're at Asiga, they're very intent on doing like all natural, organic, very healthy, and like even their coffees, they source like great single origin coffees and all quality stuff. And so they asked me if they could do a single origin hive. So what a single origin hive means, that you don't mix it with any other hive, and it not with any other harvest. So single harvest, single hive. So
you're not going to be able to do your mixing.
Well, normally I don't mix. Normally I separate by color. Yeah. So what I couldn't do with that one though is, I told her, because of necessity, it's like just how it is. All of my extractions are usually single origin because I don't have a whole bunch, right? I'm a small operation. But I said, yeah, we'll do one for you, definitely. And so that one, it should be ready to harvest. Actually, I think it's ready either this week or next week. So I'm going to go out there and try to give them some more space so they don't swarm on me.
Yeah, wait for me, though.
And then we'll wait for you to come back, and then we'll do that extraction.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to cover?
If anyone's interested in contacting me, even if I can't help you out, then I can pass them on to like Chris or someone who can. We'll just, a lot of times we put it up on the chat and whoever's available to help. So like if there's a hive extraction that needs to be done, or if someone's interested in beekeeping, or if they're interested in seeing the harvest that we're going to be doing live at Asiga, they can just look at...
we want to record that.
Yeah. So, the process, me and you, we're going to go there. We can record it, taking it out and cleaning it up. And he wants to do it in his shop.
Yeah, but we want to record that whole process.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to come and check it out, we'll be posting all the information up on our IG account, which is Hafiday Honey at Hafiday Honey on Instagram. And they can just check it out there. And then, thanks for having me.
How many beekeepers are there?
There are some beekeepers who are not in the Beekeepers Association. And so I'm not sure on the exact number, but my best guess would say about maybe 20.
How many in the association?
Maybe a little less than 20.
Not sure.
It's probably, I think, I can look it up on the chat, but there's some who are on the chat who aren't yet beekeepers. So I don't know the exact number.
They're just interested, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And if somebody sees a swarm of bees, instead of killing them, they should call who?
So preferably, if you're going to call a pesticide company, you're going to pay them to come and kill all the bees.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And because the bees actually, they just got recognized as the most important animal or insect on planet Earth, right?
Right.
And so we want to be able to help the bees, keep them alive.
They pollinate, they feed, they protect.
And so what they can do, they can try to contact that bee guy Rosario on Instagram, or they can contact me, Hafiday Honey, on Instagram, and then we'll put it on the chat, and someone who's available can try to get it right away. They'll house the bees, they'll put them in a beehive, put it on someone's property, and then that way the bees are going to be saved. And we'll get them
out of honey.
Yeah, we'll get them out of your hair. We'll get them out of your walls.
There you go. Too bad you're not in Saipan, because Pinky moved into this house, and I showed you those pictures, right? They were all alongside that roof panel. and they were like 10 hives, according to Charlie. Did
Yeah.
Charlie tell you?
No, but
You should talk to him.
I wish I was there, because what happened was actually when we were there for the relief work, my friend Shem, he's into bouldering or rock climbing.
Right.
And, we're going down to the grotto.
Right.
And he sees this beautiful boulder on the side of the road. He wants to climb it. So we go out there, and as he's climbing it, we're looking up, and I see bees coming in and out. And there's a wild hive right in there. And so Obed, one of the guys out there, he was interested in raising bees. So I'm like, you know where they're located. Now you can just go take them out.
Can you take the bees from there to here?
From Saipan to Guam?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can, but I wouldn't, because, well, they have a serious mite problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we don't want to introduce that to Guam.
Okay. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks, Rlene.
Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Rlene Live on the KUAM Podcast Network. Join her every Monday for a new edition. Log on soundcloud.com/KUAM News or listen anytime. Scroll down and click on Rlene. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. Email Rlene, RLENE, @rlenelive.com. Thanks for listening.